BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center, presented by Bud Light and Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN.
I am so happy to have you at the games on the sideline with me, and I can't wait for you to cheer me on next year when we're out there kicking ass. And so I'll see you guys next year. Hopefully I'm not at this event, and we're getting ready for another game in SoFi. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
That's what it sounded like last night as Matthew Stafford was named the NFL's MVP, announcing he will indeed return for the 2026 season. I know Tanner Hendrickson was very excited about that. Alongside T-Bone, I'm BK. Bradford Brown's back in the studio for us today. Alex taking some much-deserved vacation as the St. Louis Blues begin their Olympic break today. We begin with the MVP vote, which was extremely closely yesterday. Matthew Stafford got 24 first-place votes. He ultimately won the MVP because of that. Matthew Stafford had one more vote than Drake May, who finished with 23 first-place votes. Josh Allen had 2. Justin Herbert got the one other first-place vote that was available. In other words, because somebody, it was Sam Monson, previously with Pro Football Focus, he has since announced that, since he voted for Justin Herbert, we could have had a split MVP between Stafford and May, which would have made a lot of sense, honestly, for what this season was. But that Herbert vote took away a potential vote for May and ultimately led to Matthew Stafford winning MVP this season. I could have gone either way. I didn't have a strong lean one way or the other. I probably would have, if I had a vote this year, I think I would have gone Matthew Stafford. I thought he was, given the competition that he went up against, the best quarterback that I saw this year. And let's be real, it's a quarterback-driven award. So I would have voted for Stafford. I didn't have any issues with him ultimately winning it. I thought it was so neck and neck, though. I think it would have made a lot of sense for this to be a split MVP and for that one random Justin Herbert vote to go to Drake May. I think that would have been apt for this season. T-Bone, I know you're a homer in this regard, but what did you think about the vote yesterday and Matthew Stafford ultimately coming away with the win?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised it was super close because it did feel like it was going to come down to 1 or 2 votes to decide it. I would have sided for Stafford, and that's not just because I'm a Rams fan. I agree with what you said. I think he was the best quarterback when you watched him with the eye test this year. To me, he was the best quarterback. And the yardage kind of equaled out when you put in Drake May using his legs a little bit more. But Stafford had more touchdowns than him through the air than May had touchdowns through the air and running the football this year. 46 touchdowns. I get it. Look, he had a really good surrounding cast with him. I thought Matthew Stafford still deserved the MVP. And I know Drake May had less weapons. I still think you have to look at the total volume numbers there and go, Matthew Stafford deserves this MVP over Drake May, in my opinion.
And I do think, like, for me, the tiebreaker would be quality of competition. We've talked a lot this year about the schedule that the New England Patriots went up against. Now, they don't have to apologize for it. They have earned the fact that they are playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday. They earned that by beating the teams that were in front of them. That being said, as a neutral observer and somebody that is voting on an award like the MVP, I absolutely have to take that into account. Your production was compiled against worse opponents than what I saw from Matthew Stafford. Now, Stafford had better supporting cast around him. He's got a better, in my opinion, play caller with him. So that's also taken into account. This is why I get into, like, I don't think it was this wide gap between the two. It's kind of similar to me to the conversation last year between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think you could have gone either direction in that vote as well. It would have made a lot of sense. I felt the same way this year. Nobody pulled away. And in a situation like this, I think it made sense to vote for either of those two players. The real controversy here, though, is not whether Stafford or May won. It is the vote that went to Justin Herbert. That's where a lot of the ire is being directed today, especially on social media, because that's what we do. We find the one thing that was the outlier, and then we direct all of our attention to that. We're no different. I saw the vote, and that was immediately where my attention turned to was, how could you vote for Justin Herbert this year? Explain to me the argument for that. And Sam Monson has come out. He is the one that voted for Justin Herbert. And he basically, to summarize his argument for it, said, hey, listen, look at what Justin Herbert was able to do, and then look at his supporting cast. It was terrible. His play caller was no good. His offensive line was a joke.
That's true.
And he didn't have great weapons around him. So he dragged that team to the postseason in a really difficult division and put up pretty darn good numbers. And I think if you wanted to make the argument for him of like, hey, man, he had a really underrated season, that's a really good argument for him to have an underrated season compared to expectations. For the MVP, though, it's a crazy argument to be, because if you just stripped the name that I mentioned in relation to that argument, it's the argument for Drake May.
Yeah.
He didn't have a great supporting cast. He dragged his team not just to the playoffs, and I know this is a regular season award, but also to the Super Bowl. And he did so as a second-year player, putting up better numbers this year than Justin Herbert. So if that was your argument, if your argument was, hey, look at the Stafford supporting cast. Come on now. Best play caller in the league, 2 top 15 wide receivers and the best wide receiver in the NFL, really solid offensive line, arguably the best running game in the NFL, even though it's not the best running back, best running game effectiveness in the NFL this season. Yeah, you could have thrown a lot of quarterbacks into that situation and they would have had success. I want to go with the guy that had the worst supporting cast and truly get to the value and most valuable player argument. I think that just would have been more apt for Drake May than Justin Herbert, who was fine this season.
Yeah, and like you look at Herbert's numbers, and look, I get it. It is dragged down because he got sacked 54 freaking times, which is ridiculous. Man, he was still 600 yards short of Drake May in passing yards, right? And if we're going to argue what you just said there, which I think is a good point of, hey, what about Drake May's surrounding cast? Well, Drake May threw for 600 more yards than he did. Matthew Stafford had over 1,000 more yards than Justin Herbert did this year. And again, I get it. He has a better cast around him. Dude, 1,000 yards is a lot to try and argue this Justin Herbert deserves the MVP. If you wanted to put him like third on your ballot or even second, I could have guessed listen to that. But giving him the MVP for this, I'm with you, is ridiculous. And I would add this. I understand the weapons conversation or the surrounding cast. Wouldn't Ladd McConkey be the number 1 receiver on the Patriots? I think he'd be ahead of Diggs at this point in his career. And I get it, McConkey did not have a great year compared to what it was last year. He's a better weapon than what Drake May was throwing to all season long. Now, you could argue the running backs were better in New England. I get that. But when I'm talking about the quarterback, I'm mostly talking about who he's throwing the football to.
And it's not as though New England had this great offensive line.
No.
It was fine.
Yeah, their left tackle's been kind of a disappointment. He was drafted, what, 2nd or 3rd overall, if I remember correctly? Like, I don't know. I don't get the vote for Justin Herbert. That one to me is wild. Again, I could hear him if you're going to put him like top 5 on your MVP ballot. I'm not arguing that. To give him the number 1 vote is just ridiculous in this sense.
The other news yesterday was the Hall of Fame voting, and here in St. Louis, the headline was that Torrey Holt once again did not reach the Hall of Fame. I don't know that that's a huge surprise, to be totally candid.
According to my Twitter feed.
I know. A lot of St. Louis people are upset about it, and I get it. I do think he's a Hall of Famer, and I think he'll probably eventually get in. But when you look at the players that did get in over him this year, especially on the modern ballot, Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, Luke Kuechly, and Adam Vinatieri, man, my personal opinion on the matter, I think all of those guys had a better case than Torrey Holt. I know that's not going to be a popular opinion here in St. Louis, but that's my honest-to-God view, and I don't think he's going to have an easy time getting in next year either, because the first-time eligibles for next year's class include Rob Gronkowski, who's going to be a first-ballot Hall of Famer, Big Ben, who I think will be a Hall of Famer and probably a first ballot player, Adrian Peterson, who has a pretty solid argument as the best running back of this generation, should absolutely be a first ballot guy. I'll be curious to see how the voting goes for guys like Richard Sherman and Antonio Brown. They are also on next year's ballot. I think those are the only ones that really have a case to get into the Hall next year as first ballot guys. But I didn't mention Eli Manning, who didn't get into the Hall of Fame this year, and I think he'll probably eventually get in as well. The path for Torrey Holt is not getting easier. In fact, it's probably getting harder as these years go on.
Yeah, I'm with you. When I saw the announcement yesterday of who was in the Hall of Fame, I said, I'm sorry to Torrey Holt, but I don't think he's with these guys, right? I think Larry Fitzgerald was a better receiver than Torrey Holt. And that's not a shot against Torrey Holt, who was a great player, but he wasn't going to get in over Larry Fitzgerald. And to your point on what's coming up next, what will be interesting, and you brought this up to me off air, is typically there's a receiver that gets put in the Hall of Fame. So if voters won't vote for Antonio Brown because of the off-field stuff, is that the path towards Torrey Holt getting into the Hall of Fame? That might be his in. But that all hinges on how people are going to view Antonio Brown and what his off-field stuff has to do with what he was as a football player on the field. But, yeah, I'm with you. I didn't see, to me, Drew Brees, Vinatieri, Kuechly, those guys, to me, belonged in the Hall of Fame. And I think Torrey Holt just continues to get harder and harder that path while he continues to wait, because now we're getting into that era where there were a ton of really good receivers that are going to keep being added to the ballot as the years go on.
Who do you think is the better case between Torrey Holt and A.J. Green? Because A.J. Green will be eligible for the ballot in 2028. I already mentioned who is eligible next year: Big Ben, Adrian Peterson, Rob Gronkowski headlining that one. In 2028, you also have J.J. Watt as a first-time eligible. Tom Brady is a first-time eligible. I think he's probably going to get in. Ndamukong Suh, and then A.J. Green would be the wide receiver that is potentially on the ballot there. 2029, it's Aaron Donald, Jason Witten, Julio Jones, who I think will probably get in over him as well.
I don't know if A.J. Green will get in. He's one that I'm not 100% convinced on. I mean, he's like 3,000 yards shorter of Torrey Holt's numbers. And look, he was a stud early on in his career up until about age 29, and then it really kind of fell off of a cliff for him. He did have one rebound year in Arizona. I would vote Torrey Holt over A.J. Green, in my personal opinion.
I agree. I would go Torrey Holt over A.J. Green. I think A.J. Green was on that path, but then his career was basically cut short by all of the injuries that he had. So that might be the year. 2028 might be the year where you see something ultimately go in the direction of Torrey Holt in the Hall of Fame voting. That would be a class that could potentially include Tom Brady, J.J. Watt, and maybe Torrey Holt.
Hey, that's not a bad class to go in.
Hell of a year to go in. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. If you guys want to get involved in the show, the place to do so is the Air Comfort Service text line, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. We've got Ask Us Anything at the end of this hour. You can always check us out at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Alex out today. We've got Bradford Bruns filling in for us back in the studio for today's show. Coming up in the 12 o'clock hour, we'll be joined by Greg Wyshynski. We will also have our weekly conversation with Mike McKenna. Coming up next, do want to talk about the Cardinals. JJ Wetherholt, his future position is now legitimately in question. Is he going to be a second baseman? Is he going to be a third baseman for the Cardinals? I'm going to try to make the case that he is actually more valuable as a second baseman than a third baseman for this team, and I'll explain why next year on 101 ESPN.
The Spread Zone, where sports betting meets reckless optimism, questionable logic, and the occasional stroke of genius. With hosts Anthony Stalter, Tim McKernan, and Scott Rizzuto. Check out the latest from the Spread Zone at 101ESPN.com or the 101 mobile app. The Spread Zone is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Broadcasting live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the ENB Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN.
With Brendan Donovan traded to Seattle, there's going to be a lot of questions over the next month or so, T-Bone, about where JJ Wetherholt is best situated for his future position with the St. Louis Cardinals. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You've got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. We're broadcasting live today at the ENB Granite Studios out at the Centene Community Ice Center. Bradford Bruns back in the studio for us today as Alex is getting some much-deserved vacation as the Blues begin their Olympic break. Yesterday, MLB Network Radio put out their top 10 second basemen in the league, and it got me thinking about where would make most sense for JJ Wetherholt's long-term and why that position actually, to me, is second base. So I looked at this top 10. Number 1 is Ketel Marte. That guy's amazing. He's unbelievable. I have nothing bad to say about Ketel Marte. Set him aside for a second. Beyond Ketel Marte, the rest of the top 5 is Jazz Chisholm, Nico Horner, Bryce Terang, and Brendan Donovan. This is not meant to be disrespect to any of those 4 players. However, I think there is a realistic path for JJ Wetherholt to be second on that list this time next year. I know that sounds like it's asking a lot. Guys, go look up Jazz Chisholm and Nico Horner and Bryce Terang and Brendan Donovan's numbers from a year ago. You're not asking him to be an MVP candidate. You're simply asking him to put up typical NL Rookie of the Year kind of numbers. 20% above league average offensively and play above average defense at second base. If you can do that, there's a real chance this time next year we would be making the case for JJ Wetherholt as the second best second baseman in baseball. Meanwhile, you look at the bar to clear at third base, man, it is so much higher. I mean, some of the best players in the sport are playing third base right now. I saw yesterday, I think it was, Manny Machado was like 10th on their list of the best third basemen in baseball. You've got Jose Ramirez, Junior Caminero, Manny Machado. Maikel Garcia didn't even make the list of the top 10 third basemen in Major League Baseball right now. Carlos Correa is playing over there. I mean, it's an absolutely loaded position currently. And the reason that I bring all of this up, T-Bone, is because if you have JJ Wetherholt playing second for the Cardinals long-term, it provides that offensive upside for whoever you want to be that third baseman long-term. It just gives you that much more thump potential in your lineup. Who is that player going to be? I don't know. Maybe it's Nolan Gorman. Maybe it's somebody that is not currently either on the team or in their system. You also have a similar conversation currently with Ivan Herrera behind the plate. Because if he's able to play catcher, it gives you that much more upside with first base and DH being open for what you can get offensively out of your lineup. So that would be my case for why JJ Wetherholt, the value is at its highest if he's able to play second base. It's kind of similar to the argument that we used to make for Nolan Gorman as a second baseman versus a third baseman.
Yeah, and if you want to be a team, and I don't know if this is still how they will try and build this out, but this is how we felt going into, the last 2 years. If you're going to be a team that wants to be strong up the middle, like in terms of Gold Glove caliber shortstop, which you have in Mason Wynn, and a Gold Glove caliber center fielder and Victor Scott the second and center, those are typically some premier, at least shortstop is a premier position where it's typically bats, right? Like we saw the top 10 list of shortstops a couple of weeks ago, and it's unbelievable how deep that position is. If you're not going to be able to have someone that can get there, Wetherholt has to be that kind of guy that can play it at second base where you can really, if you're 20% above league average, you are about a second or third best second baseman in the sport. I think it's possible that he gets there. I don't know if he's getting there this year, though. And that's where I would kind of caution Cardinals fans. I'm excited for JJ Wetherholt. I think he's going to struggle as a rookie this season. I think if you look at what Jackson Holliday, by the way, was a top 10 second baseman last year. And everybody recognized it. Well, top 10 by the ranking on MLB Network Radio. But, like, if you look at his numbers, he was not a great offensive player. He is more name recognition because of the fact that he's Matt Holliday's son than by what he's done with his bat. He was 5% below league average last year, and his slash line was 242, 314, 375. I think that's kind of what I'm expecting out of JJ Wetherholt, not for his career, but what he will be the first year here in St. Louis. And again, that's not a bad player. If he can do that in year one, that would be impressive to me. That is a guy, though, that would still be a top 10 second baseman. And then you continue to dream on, okay, maybe we can get better value here at second base and have one of the better second basemen in the league. And if he can become that, that's your path to keeping Mason Wynn as a shortstop. When we had the conversation a couple weeks ago of, like, what do you do with Wynn if he's not a top 10 shortstop, right? And I said, well, potentially you're looking for an upgrade. Not necessarily if you end up with someone that can take second base by storm and be that kind of bat for you.
Yeah, I have more faith in JJ this season. Like, I have legitimate questions about the upside with a guy like JJ Wetherholt. I don't know what he's going to be long term. I don't know if he has the same, MVP caliber potential as some would like to believe. I do think, though, that the floor is extremely high. I think he translates very well to the major league level. I have almost no real concerns about him this year. And maybe that's unfair. Maybe that's unfounded. But when you look at the way that people describe him, the hit tool, I think, is the number one thing that can translate to the major league level. When you have that, it can carry you. It can allow you a little bit more stability early on. I think accessing power at the major league level is the hardest thing to do because you have to make that contact first. Yeah. And making contact at the major league level is extremely difficult to do, as we've seen from Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker and so many others. I think the best way to translate to the major league level is by having that hit tool. And that is the number one thing that is carrying JJ Wetherholt through the minor leagues. He also has a very good batter's eye. So I think maybe the power is the last thing that we see. It takes a little bit longer to get there and to become, a 20-plus home run player. Maybe it's 10 to 15 this first year. Well, that's Brendan Donovan. Brendan Donovan was a guy that hit for average, got on base, and hit for a little bit of power. I think you could see this season, if we just looked at the back of the baseball cards by the end of the year, it would not surprise me at all if Brendan Donovan and JJ Wetherholt have remarkably similar numbers across the board. And JJ Wetherholt probably comes with more upside as a base stealer.
Yeah, I would be surprised, but I would be surprised just because I see it's so hard for rookies to really get their game at this level to the major leagues, even with a good hit tool. Like, I'm curious what you would make of if this was his line. This guy did hit 20 home runs, but this was his first kind of full campaign, and hit tool was his number one tool. 269, 314, 420 is the slash line.
I'd be surprised if his on base is that low.
I would too. It's why I'm not sure it's a great comp, but that was Burley in his first year.
Yeah, I think they're very different.
He was a hit tool guy, though, right?
But he never had the on base skills that JJ Wetherholt has in the minor leagues. I think it's much more similar to what Dylan Carlson was coming through the minor league system. And I think he's a little better than what Dylan Carlson was coming through the minor league system and more ready for the major leagues than Carlson was, because Carlson was so young at the time. I think he was like 21 when he reached the major leagues. JJ Wetherholt's 23, man. That's the biggest difference to me between Carlson, Gorman, Walker, Wynn, all of those guys that came through the system, and Wetherholt. Wetherholt was a college kid who got to the Cardinals in their minor league system and was already mostly prepared for what was going to be presented to him in the minors. It was just a matter of, like, how's this going to translate once he gets to AAA and above? And I would say the same thing's true of Jackson Holliday. Holliday was a high school kid. And those guys just take more time and more seasoning because of their age. JJ's going to be 23 this year. At the time that Carlson and Walker got up to the big leagues, they were 2 years younger than that. Hell, the Cardinals drafted JJ when he was older than Carlson and Walker were when they reached the big league level. So I just expect him to translate better.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic. I hope he does, because if he does, then you can really start to dream on, A, what his potential is going to be, and B, get quicker data points to figure out how you're going to build this thing out around him. I just caution that I know how we've seen, I get it, Walker and Carlson were younger, but it's very hard on rookies to adjust to major league pitching where they can just pick you apart the moment they find a hole. And that's where it'll be interesting to see how much he's able to adjust and adjust on the fly when he gets here at the big league level, because that's the problem that we've seen with some of the other prospects where, okay, we see what the hole is, and then they struggle to adjust to it.
To be fair, those guys didn't have that problem in the rookie year. It was year two.
Walker started to get exposed a little bit before they sent him down. I get it. Text line, don't yell at me. The Cardinals broke the swing, I know. But he was better in the second half. He was getting exposed by that point.
Sure, but look back at his rookie year numbers. They were really good.
Yeah, I get it. I think it's hard to see that we're going to continue to see guys that are 20% above league average in their rookie campaigns. Like even Bobby Witt, who's a stud, right? I mean, we all agree on that. He was 2% above league average.
He was. Look at the age. I think the age is a huge factor here. Age.
He was 22 in his rookie season, and Wetherholt's what, 23?
Mm-hmm.
That's right around the same age there. 1 year, I'm not going to discount. But
I do think the fact that he went through college and had that development path, and then went through the minor league system and had a pretty sizable transition between where he was in college and where he is now. I think that really is a significant factor here. I expect him to be quite good this year. The upside, what it's going to be 5 years from now, I don't know. But right now, I think he's going to come in and immediately basically pick up where Brendan Donovan left off in terms of his offensive profile.
So I guess then my question would be like, what would you see in year one and go, that's disappointing?
I think what you were talking about with like a
below league average.
Yeah, that would be disappointing to me. No, it doesn't mean he's going to be a failure, but he's the kind of guy that I would expect to come in and be good right away. So if he's not, I would have really big questions about, all right, is this going to translate as well as we expected it to? And if there's no floor to him as a player, like if he comes up and is basically what Jackson Holiday was for the Orioles, that's a disappointment to me.
Yeah, I think if he looks overmatched like Holiday was when he first got called up, I'm with you. That would be disappointing. I think if he's like league average or slightly below, I wouldn't be disappointed just because I know how hard it is for rookies to adjust to major league pitching. Year two is when I would be willing to have that conversation of, okay, if he is still at league average or a little bit below it or barely above it, that's when I would start having that conversation of, okay, what exactly happened here and why is he not the guy that we were expecting?
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. By the way, if you want some more Cardinals conversation, you can find that over on the YouTube page. We have a new edition of the Redbird Report, which dropped yesterday at youtube.com/101 ESPN STL. That is also where you can find the latest edition of the Last Minute Blues podcast and a two-part spread zone leading in to this weekend's Super Bowl. You can find all of that on the 101 ESPN YouTube page. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into Ask Us Anything. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we'll get to those coming up at 11:45. But next, it's a huge weekend for all three of the local college basketball teams for very different reasons. We'll get into all three next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley, St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-777-7777.
That's 314-777-7777.
Jamie Rivers here, and it's time for a New Jersey giveaway. We have your shot to score an autographed Blues jersey signed by number 55, Colton Parayko. Enter to win that Colt 55 autographed jersey right now at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. Courtesy of St. Luke's, ranked top 2% in the nation for cardiac surgery by health grades. Visit stlukes-stl.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here, and Super Bowl 60 is this Sunday, and DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60. Look, I've already got my play in. I've been telling you about it all week. My favorite parlay to put together, Seahawks -4.5, JSN anytime touchdown score, and JSN for 100-plus receiving yards, and also going under on Drake May's passing yardage total. Look, he hasn't played well in the playoffs. I don't think he's going to continue to do that against this great of the Seattle Seahawks defense. And get this, DraftKings has your back this NFL postseason, and they're continuing to do so during the Super Bowl with early exit protection. If a player goes down in your eligible NFL prop bet in the first half, you still get paid out in cash immediately once your bet settles. No bonus bets, no waiting. So download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code TANNER. That's code TANNER to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
College basketball is on ESPN. Tomorrow, Purdue versus Oregon. Tip-off at noon. Your home for the NCAA is 101 ESPN. 101 ESPN. Sports Center.
Seahawks, Patriots primed for battle. Good morning, I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. In approximately 53 hours, Super Bowl 60 will kick off right here on 101 ESPN. New England, Seattle. It's a rematch from 11 years ago when Tom Brady outfoxed Russell Wilson. NFL honors takeaways, San Fran style. Matthew Stafford wins the closest MVP race since 2003, while that 2026 Hall of Fame class includes Drew Brees, Larry Fitzgerald, as well as Luke Kuechly. College Hoops tomorrow provides another showcase for number 19 St. Louis University hosting Skidding LaSalle at 2. Fifth-ranked Illinois also visits Michigan State. Mizzou draws South Carolina. The Sports Center update was presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It is a massive weekend in the college basketball landscape for each of the three local teams. Now, very different reasons for why it's a massive weekend for all three teams. For Illinois, it's about their ceiling. They've got a big game tomorrow against Michigan State. This is on the road. Michigan State is the kind of team that could be probably like a 2 seed in this year's NCAA tournament. And if Illinois is able to go on the road and beat Michigan State, it would be one of their 2 or 3 best wins of the season. It's the kind of win that when we get to Selection Sunday and they put up the graphics of best wins, worst losses, this will be prominently featured as a big part of their resume builder on why they should potentially be a number 1 seed. So that's the Illinois case. This is about upside, not downside. Illinois is going to be probably a 1, 2, at worst 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. It's about getting to that top portion of the bracket at this point in time. For SLU, it's about avoiding the dreaded bad loss on their resume. They're at home. They're going up against LaSalle, who is really bad. They are 7-16 on the year, 3-7 in conference play. They are considered to be one of the worst 100 teams or so in the country. This is you can't lose this game. Otherwise, it's the kind of loss on your resume that if things go awry and you have another game later on this season that could be a legit 50-50 proposition and you lose it and then you don't do as well as you would expect to in the A10 tournament, this is the kind of loss that could potentially be used as a blemish on your resume, where if there's some like bubble busters that happen in other tournaments across the country, you end up missing out on the tournament because of a loss like this.
And this is why I said it when they played Davison on whatever day it was, Tuesday this week. It was a good thing they came back in that one because you don't get many opportunities to have mulligans in the A10. It's the beast of the conference, right? There's not many teams that get in with at-large bids in the A10. So to have a loss, if they were to lose to LaSalle, you cannot have it on your resume.
And then for Mizzou, it's basically the same thing. A little different because they don't have the kind of resume that SLU has. But Mizzou's playing South Carolina on the road.
They stink
tomorrow.
too.
South Carolina is very bad. Mizzou's been very bad, though, on the road. I can't trust them against anybody on the road this season. And if they lose this game, there's almost no path to them getting into the NCAA tournament. I talked about this last week against Mississippi State. I don't care how you do it. I don't care what it looks like. It can be 85-84. It could be 55-54. All that matters is that you come out 1 point ahead of the opposition, and that allows you to continue to dream if you're a Mizzou fan. That's it. That's all this is about, is what is the path to getting into the NCAA tournament? Almost every path that is realistic requires a win tomorrow against South Carolina. So, T-Bone, of those 3 teams, SLU, Illinois, and Mizzou, which one has your attention this weekend the most?
I would say mine would be Missouri for the fact that they're a bubble team, right? Because if Illinois loses, don't get me wrong, I'll be watching the game. Illinois loses, it doesn't do much for their seeding purposes. It probably eliminates them from a 1. All right, so they're going to be a 2 or 3. That's not the end of the world. SLU, I just expect they're going to win, so I'm not too worried about that one. The Missouri one is the one where I look at it and go, okay, they should win this, but you're right. I can't trust them because they have been so bad on the road, and they don't have much wiggle room for air for a team that, depending where you look, is either the last 4 in or one of the first 4 or next 4 out, depending on who you're looking at for their bracketology. And if you lose this game at South Carolina, things get that much harder to try and make it up to where you almost need to pull off an upset, whether it be home against Vandy, home against Tennessee or Arkansas, or on the road at Arkansas. So if you lose this one, you almost have to pull off an upset against a top 25 team, which, watching this Missouri team, I know they beat Florida, which, credit to them, that's an impressive win because Florida's playing very well now. I don't trust them to be able to pull off a big upset if they can't take care of business here today, this weekend.
Mizzou's so weird, man. They beat Florida, Kentucky, and Auburn, 3 teams that are currently ranked in the top 30 in the KenPom rankings, and they lost to Ole Miss, LSU, and Georgia, 3 teams that none of which are ranked in the top 40 in KenPom. So I don't know. Like, I have no idea what they're going to be this weekend. My guess is it'll be really close. That's how most Mizzou games are. And then it comes down to, do they hit the big shot with 2 minutes to go or not? And then do they get the big stop with 2 minutes to go or not? Almost every Mizzou game feels the same. It's kind of like Illinois, or excuse me, like the Blues right now.
I was like, well, don't throw us in this category.
No. Every Illinois game kind of feels the same, where they're just beating the absolute hell out of the opposition. For the Blues, it feels as though every game gets to the final 5 minutes, and then you either give up the bad goal or you go to overtime and then you lose. That's what every game feels like right now. And Mizzou's basically the same.
And
or you're just waiting, and you're like, all right, are they going to hit that big three? Because if they do, they win. And if they don't, they lose.
And this kind of ties into the Blues a little bit, but not as much. They're the team that, like, plays to their competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you mentioned the Florida game. You mentioned Kentucky. Those are good teams. All right, Mizzou brings their best game. And then they, like, go on the road against LSU, and they're like, all right, we'll just kind of hang it, right? We can kind of coast through this. The next thing you know, you're in a dogfight. And at that point, you can't turn the momentum, and then you lose the basketball game and go, what the hell just happened? They feel like the typical, like, I would call it the typical 500 conference team, right? Where they play up to their competition while also playing down to their competition.
The latest bracketology came out today from ESPN.com. They had Mizzou listed among the next four out.
Oh.
So they're right now in that 73 to 76 list. Teams that are in front of them include Cal, San Diego State, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, and Seton Hall. The last four in are Miami, Texas, New Mexico, and Ohio State. Texas, to me, is going to be the team that they're compared to as we get closer to the NCAA tournament. The thing that's going to help Mizzou is their lack of bad losses. That goes back to tomorrow's game. You can't have this loss on your resume. Texas does have a couple of bad losses on their resume. Mizzou also has a couple of really impressive wins, including that win against Florida. They're going to have to continue to build up that resume as things continue. Other teams locally and where they fall on the latest bracketology, SLU is listed as a 7 seed in St. Louis, going up against Georgia. Illinois is a 2 seed, also in St. Louis. If this were to track, and it's unlikely to, but Illinois would potentially play SLU in the second round of the NCAA tournament in St. Louis.
See, this is I can see this happening because I'm telling you, the committee's got it out for Illinois. Loyola Chicago was not a 7 seed or whatever they were that year. Illinois ran into them in the second round. That is a nightmare if you are a 2 seed. And just forget about it being Illinois, though it would be worrisome for me. If you are a 2 seed, you do not want to see SLU get a 7 seed because they are the type of team that will maybe not win that basketball game, but definitely push you to the limit to where, as we see a lot in the NCAA tournament, you get inside the final 5 minutes, the team that's under the most pressure is not the 7 seed that's down by 3. It is the higher seed that's got that 3-point lead that's expected to win.
I was talking to my buddy today who lives out in Vegas, and he does a lot of bracketology stuff, and I asked him, hey, for SLU, what is the ceiling for what they could be as a seed this year? What could they get up to if they were to win out the rest of the way and they finish with 1 loss on their resume? He said, at best, probably a 4 seed. Probably like the last 4 seed is what they're going for. Maybe they could get into like that 15 if you're looking at the S-curve stuff that they do for college hoops. Maybe they could get up to like 15. More realistically speaking, you're probably talking about a 5 seed, which either way, I don't know how much that really matters for them, 4 versus a 5. They're likely to play the 4 or the 5 in that second round anyways. That's probably where you want to be if you're SLU, is on that 4-5 line, and that requires them to basically win out the rest of the way. You maybe could slip up once against VCU, for example. That's not a bad loss at all, and it wouldn't really hurt you too much on your resume. If that were to take place, I think they could probably still end up as a 5 seed, but this is the kind of game you just can't lose this weekend. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. 15 minutes from now, we'll be joined by Greg Wyshynski of ESPN.com. Talk a little bit about the Blues as they now are officially in the Olympic break. What does he see for them as we get closer to the NHL's trade deadline? Also want to get his thoughts on the Gavin McKenna situation and how that will play into his potential NHL draft stock. So Greg Wyshynski joins us in about 15 minutes. Ask Us Anything is next. 314-399-9646. That's the Air Comfort Service text line here on 101 ESPN.
You can now listen to 101 ESPN on demand. Get caught up on all our shows and podcasts at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. 101 ESPN podcasts are presented by the Schaefer Door Company. Live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the ENB Granite Studios. You're tuned into BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmers Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN. You've got questions, we may have the answers. Maybe. It's BK and Ferrario's Questions and Answers on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we'll answer them today here on BK and Ferrario. Greg Wyshynski joins us in about 10 minutes. Mike McKenna joins us in studio in 20. From the 314, what foods are you planning to eat for the Super Bowl this year?
I think I'm going pizza is what I decided.
Yeah.
Order some pizzas from someplace. I think that's I think that feels like the go-to. That and a good cold beer.
I'm going to go pizza as well. I typically go over to the in-laws' house on Sundays. This year, we've got something planned in the morning for all of the little ones, the cousins in the family. So we're going to go do that. Then we're going to come home because we are starting to pack for our vacation, which starts on Tuesday. So it's going to be a less eventful Super Bowl, A, because the Chiefs aren't in it, and B, we just got a lot going on this week.
Yeah.
314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything from the 314. Do you think we can reasonably expect the Cardinals to pay Mason Wynn $250 or more million when he's eligible for his first big contract? I don't think they're going to have to.
Agreed.
I don't think there's really many scenarios in which Mason Wynn becomes that kind of a player.
Yeah, I agree on that front. I don't know about the $250 million, whoever the next $250 million player is for the Cardinals. I honestly don't know. I don't know what they're going to be willing to do. I don't know what their TV situation is going to look like, and if they will even have the appetite to do that, and let alone what the structure of baseball's financial system is going to look like.
From Mahomes' long body, guys, the last two Super Bowl MVPs who were not quarterbacks were both wide receivers with Julian Edelman and Cooper Kupp. I'm going to take a shot with Diggs, JSN, and Rashid Shaheed to win the MVP. Does this sound like a crazy, dumb play to you? Shaheed is one that I find to be really interesting because he's also the returner. So you've got a couple of different areas where that could work. If it's a really low-scoring game and Shaheed ends up with like
a punt return.
Yeah, but I was going to say a screenplay offensively and then a punt return as well, and he scores 14 of their 20 points, something like that. He's the one guy that has a touchdown in the game. That would be the way for him. So I like him as a long shot bet. If you're taking a shot on one of the Patriots receivers, I actually think I would potentially go with Kayshon Boutte. And the reason why is because he'll probably have longer odds, and he's the more likely guy in that offense to have a big play. And I think the way for the Patriots to win this game is with a big play from one of their receivers. So I'd go Boutte over Diggs, but otherwise, yeah, JSN, Shaheed, potentially Boutte. I think those are interesting plays to me.
I really like JSN to win Super Bowl MVP because I think if the Seahawks are going to be putting up points, which I do think they're going to do a decent job of that, I think it's going to look a lot like it did in that Rams game where it's basically Sam Darnold just gets it into the hands of JSN somehow and lets him do his thing. So I love him on a play. I don't mind the Shaheed one either because you've got the outs, as you had mentioned. I would not bet on a Patriots receiver to go for MVP because I don't know that we're going to see, you mentioned those big plays. I don't know if we see big plays given up by the Seahawks. I think if the Patriots do win, it's probably going to be May that wins MVP, and I think it's going to be they're just going to have to play smart. It's the thing we always talk about with Mahomes and Brady. Why are they so good? They take what the defense give you. So they dink and dunk their way down the field, and if you do that, odds are you probably don't see a receiver that ends up with a huge play that really stands out to get the MVP.
Maybe not, but I mean, you're throwing a few bucks on it, hoping to win a bunch of money.
Oh, we're here to throw a few bucks while also winning. Winning is what we're shooting for.
Most of these are not going to win.
I would not bet on a Patriots receiver. Stand by it.
That's fine. I have not seen what the odds are on this. I wish that they were easier to find on the app, but I'll check those out here in just a little bit to see what the odds are for Super Bowl MVP as well. From the 636, BK, the rumor mill for the Chiefs and who they will draft this year at number 9 overall is all over the place. What do you think they will ultimately do in the first round? I've changed my tune on this a bit. I think Ruben Bain, the defensive end out of Miami, is the best case scenario for them at number 9 overall. I do not know that there's another defensive end that really makes sense for them at that pick. I do not think that it makes sense to go with Jeremiah Love, even though he's a awesome football player, and I think he's going to be great at the next level, but with free agency coming first and then the draft, I don't think they can just avoid a free agent running back. They're going to have to pay somebody. So if you're going to pay somebody and then you get to the draft and you give $7 million per year guaranteed to Jeremiah Love, are you really investing $15+ million into the position when you're in a tight cap situation? I don't know that makes sense given where the Chiefs are at. I think I've arrived at a place where I'm invested in them drafting a wide receiver at number 9. That's, I think, the best case scenario. I don't think they can re-sign Rashee Rice long-term. You just can't trust him. I don't think Xavier Worthy is a number 1 wide receiver at any point in his career. So get Mahomes the number 1 weapon that he's been lacking since they let Tyreek Hill go via the trade. That's the direction that I would personally like to see them go. Fix your running back spot, fix the defensive end spot with free agency, draft the wide receiver.
And you correct me if I'm wrong here, but the running back free agency class,
it's stacked.
It's deep. Yeah, it's not like in years past where it's like 1 or 2 guys that you could look at and say, okay, we've either got to get that guy or we end up having a really big question mark. And I'm not saying like any of these guys are going to be like studs, but they're all pretty good running backs that are available. I think it runs like 5 to 7 guys deep, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. By the way, I have finally found the NFL Super Bowl odds here. If you wanted to get Rashid Shaheed, it's like 30-1 odds on him. Butte is, I think, 11-1 odds on him as well. So you can get, 110-1 odds on Kayshon Butte. Yeah, I'd make that bet. 110-1. Yeah, that sounds good to me.
You want to do Drew Lock at his odds plus 9? He's got better odds somehow than Butte.
No, I'm good. 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, that is the place to get them in. I'm a little surprised we didn't get any questions today about the Washington Post or the St. Louis Post-Dispatch situation, but we didn't get any questions today on the text line, so I will save my thoughts on all of that. Coming up in 15 minutes, we'll get into our conversation with Mike McKenna, the former NHL goalie. He joins us each and every Friday on the show. He will do so today in studio. We'll talk to Macadoodle Mike coming up in a little more than 15 minutes. Greg Wyshynski, the ESPN NHL analyst, joins us next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is your home for Blues hockey. Every month during the season, you can score a pair of tickets to a Blues game at Enterprise Center. A new winner is picked every month throughout the season. Enter to win now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 mobile app, presented by Ted Drew's Frozen Custard.
Hey, it's BK for my friends over at Underdog. Now is your chance to get in on all of the action for the big game. It's right around the corner, only a couple of days away, and you should check out your app today. Use our promo code BKO if you have not downloaded it just yet. I'll tell you more about what that gets you here in just a moment. But when I opened up my Underdog app earlier today, I had a couple of bonus boosts over there for me. I could get in on the action on the big game. I personally went with the Seattle Seahawks to win. I've got Stephon Diggs higher on his reception total. I also like Jackson Smith and Jigba to go higher on his receiving total as well. I like Rashid Shaheed. We talked about him as a potential MVP candidate for this game. I like him to go higher on his rushing yardage. So it's only at 4.5, so you can get that over on the Underdog app today as well. If they get him on one of those jet sweeps, maybe in the red zone, maybe they get him a 6 to 10 yard run and then he ends up in the end zone. Go ahead and put maybe a Rashid Shaheed rushing or receiving touchdown in there as well. It's all available for you today. You can put on all of those picks over on the Underdog app. Sign up using our promo code BKO. You can score $75 in fantasy bonus entries when you play your first $5 on fantasy. That's promo code BKO. Underdog. Make plays, win money. Must be 18 or older, present in Missouri. Terms to apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
Want more blues talk? Check out the Last Minute Blues podcast with Alex Ferrario, Donnie Fandango, and Jeremy Rutherford on 101 ESPN. The guys bring you the latest news and nuggets on your St. Louis Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast is presented by Blue Note Roofing. Roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for free inspection. Watch or listen to the Last Minute Blues podcast now on our YouTube channel or at 101ESPN.com.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis 101 ESPN is driven by Brown and Crouppen Law Firm. BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center, presented by Bud Light and Skimmers Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. Our guy Alex Ferrario is off today, but he did us a solid. He was supposed to talk to Greg Wyshynski the other night for pregame on the Blues broadcast. Everything then happened. The Olympic roster freeze was that day. Artemi Panarin was suddenly traded, and then the Gavin McKenna news came out. And so Greg Wyshynski was not able to join Alex for the pregame show. So he joins us now via the Callier and Thompson hotline. You can find all of his work over at ESPN.com. You can find him on Twitter as well at Wyshynski, WYSHYNSKI. Greg, we appreciate the time as always. How you doing today?
Doing well. It really was the Gavin McKenna news that was the monkey wrench in the gears. I mean, but when you have the top NHL draft prospect breaking a guy's jaw outside of a bar, well, by golly, you've got to write the story, don't you?
You sure do. And let's go ahead and start there, Greg, because for better or for worse, the Blues are in discussions, at least in the conversation, for getting the number one overall selection this year. How do you think this plays into Gavin McKenna as a draft prospect, if at all?
Well, we are talking about the National Hockey League, so undoubtedly it makes him more endearing to general managers that he got into a bar fight and can apparently throw a punch. But, you know, I asked a bunch of draft experts in the wake of this news whether they felt it was going to impact his draft position, and they universally said no. You know, there's been a little bit of a wobble on him being the consensus first overall pick in the draft. I think the slow start that he had at Penn State was one reason for it. But overall, you know, the consensus is still that Gavin McKenna is going to be the first overall pick in the draft, and rightfully so. He's a dynamic scoring winger who, you know, apparently can take care of himself as well.
Greg, I did want to ask you, how surprised are you to see where the St. Louis Blues are today? If I remember correctly, you were a little bit lower on them coming into the season, but I don't remember you being as low as they'd be the second worst team in the NHL.
No, I don't think I was that low. I definitely didn't have them in my playoff picture, but I didn't think they'd be quite as bad as they've been. But then again, it's been a bit of a topsy-turvy season overall in the NHL in both conferences. Listen, this is going to be a team of transition, and it's been a team of transition. And then the question becomes, as we get closer to the trade deadline, how deep are the cuts going to be? And I think that's entirely contingent on a couple of factors. One, obviously, is the trade protection that some of the players we're talking about have. In the case of someone like Jordan Kyrou or Robert Thomas, Justin Falk. And then the other is, if you ask around the league, discussions about some of these players have involved the Blues looking for quite a haul coming back the other way. And, do those prices drop at all as we get closer to the deadline? And what is the level of desperation for Doug Armstrong in trying to reshape this roster? And could that impact what they're looking to get back?
I don't get the sense, just talking to people locally and then hearing some of the stuff that's being floated nationally, that the Blues are actually going to trade Robert Thomas at this year's deadline, Greg. But I do think Jordan Kyrou is at least a real possibility if they can make it work money-wise. What do you think the market would potentially be for a guy like Kyrou if he is actually made available?
It's a great. I mean, listen, he is available. I mean, I think they tried to move him last summer as well. But, he's got protection and maybe things didn't come together trade-wise. But I don't think that it's been any secret that they've kind of at least put his name out there insofar as trying to move him. It should be a robust market. I mean, I think in Kyrou's case, the idea of adding a top six goal scorer into your lineup is pretty desirable. And given how many players that might otherwise be available in unrestricted free agency are now re-signing with their own teams because the cap has gone up so much, the ability to acquire one, I think, is going to be paramount for some of these teams. I agree with you on Thomas. Like, I'm not quite sure why his name is on trade boards for this season, because I think that's a deal, if it ever comes together, that probably happens in the off season, when you can kind of cast a wider net and get more people involved, because as much as like a scoring winger is coveted in this league, center is like a unicorn. Like when they become available, like they just don't become available. So if Robert Thomas was ever on the trading block and wanted to go somewhere else, because he'd have to sign off on it, I think the haul back for the Blues would be pretty considerable, and the market for him would be pretty robust.
He's also the one that just makes me nervous as a Blues fan. If you're going to make this deal, listen, Kyrou could come back to bite you. Don't get me wrong. He could go on somewhere else to score 35 goals, but maybe it's just time. With Thomas, I'm not sure that they've ever given him the winger that can really take advantage of his skill set, Greg. And that makes me wonder. I mean, we talk about Gavin McKenna or Stenberg, the guys that are potentially at the top of this year's draft. If one of those guys does become a legit top-line winger and you could pair him with Robert Thomas and you traded Thomas either at this year's deadline or in the summer, maybe you just missed the moment and you ended up wasting a potential number one center and pairing him with the guy that he's lacked all along. It makes me think maybe next year is the time, if it doesn't work with he in one of these top wingers, maybe that's when you really consider it. But right now, I just don't think it makes sense for them.
I'm with you. I'm a huge Robert Thomas fan, by the way, like not only as a player, but as a person. If there's a knock on him, maybe it's his ability to stay in the lineup, but sometimes it's out of your control. I just think that he's the kind of player where if you trade him away, you spend the next 3 to 4 years trying to find him again, in a younger player or in a different player. He's definitely one of those part of the solution, not part of the problem guys for me. And I think you make a really great point about McKenna. That's what makes him such an interesting prospect. I mean, there's been so many drafts in the past 10 or 15 years where the consensus first overall guy has been a center, and he's not. He's a winger. And so if you bring him on, you'd expect that a player like that would be able to drive his own line, but it certainly would make life easier if you're the Blues and you land Gavin McKenna to have someone the caliber of Robert Thomas playing in the middle for him and feeding him pucks.
And Greg, with that being said, if it was that they decide to keep Thomas and then they take whether it be Stenberg or McKenna in the top two, how long do you think it takes for the Blues to turn this around? Is this something to where they could be back into the playoffs next year, or do you think it's going to take them longer to do so?
I think it's going to take them a little bit longer. Like I'd like to see a little bit more aggressive retooling on the back end, where up front they've got some pieces and will probably acquire more via the draft. But what's been happening between the goaltender and the forward group has, I think, been a problem for this team in multiple seasons. There's still questions to be answered as far as like what Jordan Binnington's future with this team is. What Braden Shannon's future with his team is as he continues to get older and obviously has an incredible amount of value in the trade market if they went in that direction. So look, there's going to be some guys on this roster we know are going to hang around. I mean, like Neighbors is going to be here and others are going to be here and hopefully Thomas is going to be here. So it's not as if the cupboard is bare. It's not like when the Blackhawks stripped the thing down to, the copper wiring to acquire Connor Bedard. But I do think that it is going to take a little bit of time to really kind of get to this team on solid footing, especially on the defensive end.
All right, last thing that I've got here for Greg Wyshynski, our friend and ESPN NHL analyst, joins us via the Callier and Thompson hotline. Greg, the Olympics are right around the corner, and I would say Jordan Binnington has been one of the hot-button conversations here locally for a number of years. Certainly that is going to be the case once again for Team Canada. How do you view his potential as being the starting goalie for Team Canada as he currently boasts an .864 save percentage in 2026?
Well, Canada got to see the full Binnington experience of Four Nations, right, where he looks soft and he looks porous, and then he has the game of his life and becomes impenetrable, on a certain night. It's just that's what Binnington does, and unfortunately for the U.S., it happened to happen in overtime of the gold medal game. The thing that makes Canada really interesting is, obviously the U.S. has a huge advantage in goal. Hellebuck, Ottinger, Swayman is better than anything Canada's going to throw at them. But I do think that what's behind Binnington in the Olympics is better than what was behind him in Four Nations with Darcy Kemper and especially Logan Thompson, who's played incredibly well for the Capitals. So, I think Canada's got some better options in case Binnington isn't the guy in the Olympics. And that's kind of where I am right now. And if the goaltending fails Canada, there's always a chance they fall short of the gold medal game. But I think they're just so good up front and so good on the back end and will have at least a goalie that can make some saves. I would be surprised if they don't play for gold. I'm a little bit more wobbly on the U.S., if I'm being honest with you. Like, I just think that, this is the deepest, most talented team I've ever seen wear the USA jersey. But it's also a team that outside of Jack Eichel and Matthew Tkachuk has a lot of guys that haven't been in gigantic pressure situations playing for Stanley Cups and such. So I'm just hoping there's not some game in the quarters of the semis where they're down 2-1 in the third period to Slovakia and they're gripping their sticks and they're getting flop sweat and they fall short of the gold medal game. But that's kind of my concern right now.
Greg, quick follow-up on Jordan Binnington. I know what the numbers say from what he's been with the St. Louis Blues this year, but if he does have big game Benner in him again, how much would that boost his trade stock when we get back to NHL action that week leading up to the trade deadline?
I mean, listen, I think his reputation precedes him in any trade talk. Like, I think there are teams out there that nobody's capable of, and you can't take away the Stanley Cup ring, and you can't take away the moments that he's had in the postseason where he's really rose to the occasion. And I'm sure there are teams out there that believe that in a different defensive structure and maybe with some better D-man in front of him, they could draw out the things that make Binnington a special player. But listen, there's no question that there's an Olympic effect for some of these guys, where, if Macklin Celebrini scores the gold medal goal in overtime, like Sid did back in 2010, he probably wins the Hart Trophy this year if the Sharks make the playoffs. I always think back to 2010 and the fact that Ryan Miller won the Vezina that year. He had a great year, but I'm sure most of the GMs voting for him were probably thinking about him bringing the U.S. into that gold medal game. So the Olympics can have sort of a psychological impact on a player's value and how a player is perceived. But again, overall, I think most of these guys know what Binnington is and they know what they're getting. On some nights, he's going to look extremely bad, and on some nights, he's going to be overly aggressive. On some nights, he's going to chirp the other bench. And then on one night, he's going to stop 35 shots and look like he's Dominik Hasek. That's just kind of where he is right now in life.
Greg Wyshynski is one of the best in the business. We always enjoy chatting with him. I prefer it when we're at the Enterprise Center, and we're doing so prior to a playoff hockey game. But instead, today we're talking to him going into the Olympic break where the Blues are the second worst team in the NHL. This is where we are. Greg, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy your Olympic break, if that's what you want to call it. I'm sure you're going to be doing plenty of coverage on the Olympics, but we'll talk with you again soon, man.
The Blues are costing me a lot of time at local craft breweries in St. Louis, and I'm not forgiving them for that right now. So let's get them back in the playoffs.
Hopefully we can do that as soon as humanly possible. Take it easy, Greg.
Anytime.
You got it. That's Greg Wyshynski joining us here on 101 ESPN. Appreciate his time as always. Man, I am so envious of the teams that get to go into this break and they're thinking about, all right, who are the players that we're going to add at this year's deadline? Yeah. And they're probably looking at the Blues like we would be if we were in a different situation. If, like, you switched the Blues and, I don't know, the Washington Capitals, for example, and the Capitals had the Blues roster, and we're looking at them and we're like, all right, what do you want?
That'd be great.
you want to go get Jordan Kyrou? Do you go get Justin Falk? What about Braden Shin? I mean, he's got the veteran leadership, been there, done that. He brings the specific style that you're looking for. Pius Suter doesn't even have no trade protection. He's a perfect middle six center. You know what? That Sonny guy, he's had success in the playoffs before. Bring him in, fourth line center, plays that rugged style, great on the penalty. I mean, they just have like legitimately 10 different dudes that you could look at, and you could at least convince yourself, if you're another team, that's the missing piece for us to get ourselves over the top. Instead, we're having the opposite conversations, which are definitely not as fun.
I miss those conversations because those are conversations that feel more realistic to find out right away if you're right or wrong. Like, for example, if you trade for Kyrou, will it work out or not? You'll get an idea in year one, kind of, a little bit, more so on rentals, too. Man, when we have these conversations lately here in St. Louis, it's like, what about this prospect that's going to be here in 2028? Did we end up getting the right guy in our trade and our sell-off? Those conversations aren't fun if we're just being honest.
A text line from the 314. Guys, when was the last time that we actually talked about the Blues adding at the deadline? Even in 2019, they really just stood pat outside of a small move. 2022.
Yeah, was that the year they added Letty?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was the last time that we really had serious conversations about what they could potentially add as they got closer to the deadline. Last year it was about, do you stand pat? Do you sell? What's the plan? And then they went on that crazy run. Parayko got hurt, that kind of stuff. But it was more about, like, can they convince you that this team is worthy of sticking together more so than, like, investing in them as a team? So 22 would have been the last time that you really thought seriously about adding to the core group of players they had. Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. We just saw Mike McKenna pulling up. He's going to join us in studio. The former NHL goalie joins us next here on 101 ESPN.
It's time for another moment in Blues history.
On this day back in 1985, the Blues would shut out the Vancouver Canucks at the St. Louis Arena 4-0. Mark Reeds, Dave Bard, Joe Mullen, Greg Paslowski would all score goals for St. Louis. Joe Mullen would pick up his 26th goal of the season. And in between the pipes, Mike Liut stopping all 35 Vancouver shots.
This date in Blues history is powered by Classic Air Care.
Make your life more comfortable for all your HVAC, plumbing, and electrical needs. ClassicAirCare.com.
ESPN has your shot to score a 4-pack of tickets to Monster Energy AMA Supercross, returning to the Dome at America's Center Saturday, April 4th. Watch the premier riders in the world as well as the rising stars as they put it all on the line for the coveted title of Supercross Champion. Experience the intense racing of the world's most demanding sport live at Monster Energy AMA Supercross.
Get all the info and register to win a free 4-pack of tickets now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 app.
Broadcasting live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the ENB Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmers Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN. We're going between the pipes with former NHL goaltender Mike McKenna.
Between the Pipes is refreshed by Macadoodle Spirits, fine wine, beer, and cigars. Now open in Darden Prairie.
Happy to be joined in studio today by our friend, the former NHL goalie, Mike McKenna, joining us here on the show. Mike brought some goodies with him. Buzzard's Roost, something that you can find right now over at Macadoodles. Talk about that here in just a moment. Is the bottle, the single barrel bottle that he brought into the studio with us today. Mike, how you doing, man?
Well, good. You know, when I bring samples, I'm sure everybody's a little bit excited for it. So, yeah, today we've got a Buzzard's Roost Double Oak Single Barrel Cigar Bourbon, 114.8 proof, aged at least 6 years. A proprietary char on that barrel. But a lot of people don't know Buzzard's Roost, the name brand. This stuff is outstanding. It's one of the newer ones, and they just focus on finishing. And anyway, big fan of them. We'll take a sip in a little bit. But you guys keep talking about McKenna, and it's not me, and it's throwing me off when I hear you guys on the air, right? Like Wish is on here talking last, and McKenna. I'm used to hearing my name when I'm at Six Flags and somebody's yelling at a 7-year-old girl. That's where my life has gone with McKenna. And now all of a sudden it's, hey, how's your nephew? It's not my nephew, folks.
I do want to ask you about that. Let's get into it because one of the big storylines for the Blues this year is not so much about their playoff standings as it is the draft standings for them. Right now, they're in that second slot, second worst team in the NHL. The lottery will ultimately determine where they fall in that. But as you saw this story with Gavin McKenna earlier today, or earlier this week, for those that aren't familiar, just the background here before I get your thoughts on it, the reporting from Penn State and those surrounding the program is Gavin McKenna and his teammates were out at a bar, and another individual at that bar was allegedly chirping Gavin McKenna's mom. And McKenna grew increasingly frustrated with this and allegedly punched the guy in the face, broke his jaw, and now there are multiple charges, including a felony, against Gavin McKenna. Now, where this all goes, who knows? But that is what has been alleged for Gavin McKenna last weekend. And it is something that's going to at least be taken into account when you look at him as an NHL draft prospect, rather. What was your reaction when you saw this news and the story that had come out?
It's always instantly, man, you just can't do that. But the human side of you is also, you reach a certain breaking point and things happen. And again, we're only getting the one side of the story here. So we have to preface it by that. We weren't in the building to see what happened. But if he knocked out some guy who was being an idiot to him after a prolonged period, I think everybody can kind of empathize with that at some point. What's frustrating is that when people come at you like that, when you're in a high-profile position, you know what they're looking for. And it's attention. It's, I'm this big, tough guy. I'm going to take down the hockey. Well, obviously that didn't end up well for the guy. I mean, broken jaw, missing teeth. Like, guy got lasered. End of story. But you hear this constantly in your media training and in everything that you do with hockey is that you just can't put yourself in a bad position. And this is honestly, guys, exactly why players don't go out on the road anymore. Like in the NHL. Like, they go have dinner, they go back to the room, play video games, go to bed, whatever. Like, it's just because of this. It's not even that people drink less. I know I got a liquor store, but I mean, the players aren't drinking like crazy anymore. They're having nice meals, but they're not partying. They're so career focused, and they know that if anything happens, it's going to be on social media. And for someone like Gavin McKenna, who hasn't hit the pro stage yet, and you're on a college campus, man, it's even more amplified where you're surrounded by people of your own age too, who everybody knows who you are. So it's tough because you just hate to see him take the bait here. But then on the flip side, though, guys, like I think it might actually help us draft status. Like, how many people do you have out there that are going to go first or second overall that's knock somebody out in a bar? I'm just being objective here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I'm just different in this regard.
It is, man. And,
if this was a basketball player and he was able to be, basically baited into a really bad situation, you'd look at it and be like, man, that's the kind of thing you just can't have happen away from the court. We can't trust you.
Right.
But in the NHL, it's almost viewed, in some circles at least, as, all right, that guy, he stuck up allegedly for his mom, and he, he can stick up for himself to the point where he broke another dude's jaw and knocked some teeth out. And in the NHL, on the ice, you want to bottle that up and stick with it only on the ice. That can be a positive in this specific sport because it is so unique in that regard.
We have a 5-minute penalty for fighting, not a felony.
Correct.
But again, it just goes back to putting yourself in a tough position. And I'm absolutely not condoning violence. I don't want anybody out there to think that I'm just going to I was going to say walk into Telania's and laser somebody, but Telania's is long gone, RIP Telania's. But you just see this stuff happen though. Like we had one Christmas party where one of our guys clobbered somebody who walked in and was being an idiot. And guy had plenty of warnings. And the guy who did it, I'll never forget, he just absolutely lasered this guy. The guy fell like an oak tree because the guy had walked in and pushed Mark Parrish, who was our captain at the time, who had his arm in a sling after Mark had politely asked this guy to leave the bar. And he just kept pushing and pushing. And the guy just got clobbered. And nothing came of it, though, because in that situation in 2011 or something, not everybody's got a phone with a camera, and the bouncers all knew this guy was being a moron, so they just chucked him out. My teammate turned around and dusted his knuckles off and goes like this, and it was crazy to see. But I don't think it's really going to hurt him unless he's really facing like legit jail time with this. Which I mean, they set up to 20 years, but something like this ends up with a fine usually.
Yeah,
community service or something, and maybe you pay the kids medical bills. Exactly. I don't know, but you don't want to see it happen. But again, I just think in hockey, it's just different, man. Like there's no questions about it. Yeah, okay, this guy's man enough to play in the NHL.
Mike, to transition to the St. Louis Blues now, it does tie a little bit in with this top pick that they could potentially have. We had this conversation, I think, earlier this week, and BK, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But, we've talked to you about your thoughts on trading Robert Thomas, whether it be at the deadline or in the offseason. You get a top pick winger to potentially come in on his wing. We've seen it can be tough for guys to adjust to the NHL level. Is this something to where if you bet on keeping Robert Thomas now and pairing him up with this top pick, that you basically are betting on this for the rest of the 4 years under Thomas's deal? Or would you evaluate it year by year to see how it goes as he's kind of growing with a rookie to then try and make that move?
Well, you're going to hope that let's say this comes to fruition, okay, and maybe not just Gavin McKenna, maybe let's say it's Stenberg.
Sure.
And wouldn't that be really cool for the Blues? A couple Stenbergs like that. From everything that I've seen, heard, those are going to be two players that are probably impactful at the NHL level right away. Okay, Gavin McKenna, absolutely expected to. Stenberg, you're expecting to be able to step in. Are they an instant bump from what the Blues have had previously on the line with Robert Thomas? Is it an instant bump? I don't know, but I can tell you in a year or two it probably is. Yeah. Unless you get stuck with a Lafreniere scenario or a Capo Caco that for some reason, the Rangers got dealt a couple bad cards there, I guess. Like, not bad players, but you just can't put all your eggs in one basket and hoping you're going to tank and get this position, though, because you never know in this game. So, but that's the biggest reason why, to me, I just don't see trading Thomas as a good idea. Unless you're getting an absolute game changer, number one defenseman on your blue line, and I don't see that availability out there. I see Robert Thomas as your best player that you're going to need. Because if you do land one of these early top picks, it's going to accelerate this team in a year or two. If they don't land one of these top 2 or 3 picks, the acceleration of the team doesn't happen, and it's still going to be 3 years away, maybe 4, before you start to see the maturity of the current crop of prospects we see.
It's an interesting spot to be in as a team. And the backstop to all of it was supposed to be Jordan Binnington, and that has not gone as they had planned this season either. I do want to ask you, as we are now heading into this Olympic break, and we're talking to Mike McKenna, former NHL goalie, joining us here on BK and Ferrario on behalf of Macadoodles. Jordan Binnington was expected to be the starting goalie for Canada going into these Olympics. He earned that opportunity after his performance in the Four Nations face-off. Do you still think that's the case? Do you think he goes into this as the leading candidates to be Team Canada's goalie?
I'm not sold on it. I just, and it's not just the fact that Binnington's year hasn't been great. He's also not had any defense in front of him, but there's a mental fatigue to that it is the one thing about Binnington that he can somehow flip that switch. Like it happens with him where he can just go to lights out in nothing, you know? But after having kind of a miserable year so far, if his first game doesn't look great, yeah, I'm probably looking to another direction where I know if I've got somebody in the hopper who's been winning games. And that's kind of the outside looking in. I think everybody around the league's looking, going, wow, is Canada really going to start a guy who right now isn't the number one goalie for his team? Mm-hmm. That's the reality. Okay. I'd kind of be surprised if he gets carte blanche here off the bat, even with his resume. I think this is not foregone conclusion in any way. And I think Canada, especially with having a bit of depth in that, I think they'd be willing to pivot from.
Do you think it's basically like one game? He gets one game. If you don't look good in that game or don't look really great in that one game, if they turn their attention elsewhere?
It won't be more than two. It'd be tough to can a guy after one and take the leash away right off the bat, but there's a lot of urgency to these games. And the hard part in round robin is you're not always going to play the best teams either, right? Yeah. So, let's face it, he's probably going to get a layup game off the start here, and it probably look fine. So you may not know until that second game where the chips are really down. So, if you go out and have a disaster against, Germany or somebody, like, boy, you got to look in the mirror real fast. But if it's against a stronger team, you get a little bit more.
And what I find so interesting about it, Mike, and I don't know how you view this or not, but big game binners is the thing that kind of carries the reputation when you were talking about trading for them, whether it was at this year's deadline or even like last year's deadline, for example, when we thought they potentially could be sellers. Well, you don't really look at the regular season numbers. You know you're going to get a guy that's going to be a stud when it comes to the playoffs. If he does have just one bad tournament, do teams look differently at him and have to start looking at him as the regular season guy that is a average to below average goalkeeper, or do they still look at him and say, well, maybe that was just a one-off, he still does have that big game ability?
Well, I think he needs a big tournament. I do. Because now you're at the point where the seasons for him have just kind of gone up and down, and it's been with the Blues. It's your defense in front of you matters, but now you've got a factor where he has a goalie partner who has outplayed him. And that's what hasn't happened these past few years. You never really had a sample size to draw from there. No. Chad Johnson didn't even finish the year.
Right.
Thomas Greiss, his last season. Billy Husso, his game kind of, went up and then he was gone. And so if he doesn't have a big tournament, I think people are starting to look at him as, we really don't know what we have with this. And if you're looking at trade value, goalies already have depressed trade value. Like, you're not getting a first rounder for a goalie anymore. Like, are you just getting rid of his contract? Are you actually getting something back? Is it worth getting rid of his contract when you have a tandem like Hofer and Binnington? Honestly, for me, I'm not seeing the greatest value in trading Binnington as much as I do seeing trading Falk, who you can get something for. Come on, a right shot D that can score. You're going to get more than you think from Justin Falk. Like, you saw Bukestad got a fourth rounder, man. Mm-hmm. Like, there's value in these guys that are pretty proven around the league.
He's Mike McKenna. Appreciate him joining us each and every week on BK and Ferrario. Today, he brought in a fantastic double oak single barrel pick. You can check that out over at Macadoodles. Mike, tell us a little bit about what we're drinking today and what you guys have available right now over at Macadoodles.
Yeah, this is a company called Buzzard's Roost, and they source their juice. So it comes from a company called MGP, which it really lets them focus on the finish. So they've got this proprietary char that they have on the barrel. Hits oak twice, but the big thing is it being a cigar bourbon. Cigar bourbons are actually a little bit sweeter. They're made to stand up to a cigar. I don't smoke cigars at all. Now, Tanner, I know you're down with that, so I'd love to see your thoughts on how this might pair with one.
I can tell you this is going to pair nice with the cigar.
Right. So it's meant to stand up to it, but really, cigar blends, if you have a little bit sweeter palate, are phenomenal. And I got 23 bottles of it. You can try it at the store. It's $74.97. I also have another barrel pick coming in today of Caribou Crossing, which is the original single barrel Canadian whiskey. Super sought after. It's got a moose on the thing on top. It looks like it's, I might as well, the promos could just have Mounties holding the bottles, but I'll have 30 of those out today. When I get back to the store, I am going to have some Penelope Havana out amongst other things. We're just getting ready for the big game, man. Plenty of beer waiting for everybody. Big game, the big game, as we have to call it.
This
Sunday.
Is fantastic.
Thank you.
I would recommend, I'm a big bourbon guy in general. I like a more rye forward whiskey as well. And you can tell this has a lot of the spice that you would typically get from a rye. But if you're not somebody that loves a typical rye whiskey because it's almost too spicy for you, there is a sweetness on the palate that comes through in this that kind of takes away from some of the overload of a typical rye whiskey. That's a really, really nice blend. And
balanced.
It's the 114 proof could scare away some people. That's a little bit hotter than some of the stuff that you'll see on the shelves. That ain't bad at all.
No.
That's not one of those that you sip and you're like, oh, that put hair on my chest immediately. Like you get that with a Stag, for example. Those things come in and they're just immediately to blow your face off. This is not that way at all. That's a really nice bottle. And for about $75, that's not a bad price point either.
That's great. Yeah, and it's over 30% rye. The mash bill's 61 corn, rye, and a little bit of malted barley. So you nailed it. You know your stuff. I do want to give one quick thing before we take off today, man. I got to tell you this. Every Friday, I play hockey at Kirk with my group, and we entered the zone today, and I'm on the line with my dad. And my dad turned 76 in a couple of weeks here, right? And, we got in this, quadrilateral formation in the zone, and, 2 quick passes later, I ended up hitting my dad on the backside who scored this morning. And it doesn't happen that often. And it just reminds you that this is a sport you can play forever. It really, I just hope someday my daughters want to keep playing with dad at some point. And I know there's other people who experience that in the city and just how cool that is. So it was a moment that I really enjoyed, and I hope just sharing it. It was awesome. I wanted to talk about it.
I was not somebody that grew up with hockey in Kansas City. It just wasn't a thing. It wasn't something that I was ever exposed to. I just didn't grow up with it. It was more basketball, soccer, baseball, football. Those were the big things in KC. And now I get to see it through my son's lens, where he is growing up with the Blues, and all he is willing to wear on a day-to-day basis is a Blues shirt. If he does not have a Blues shirt on, then something has gone horribly awry. And so we get home, we bought him this little mini rink that we put downstairs on the floor. For multiple hours most days, we're playing hockey downstairs with my 2.5-year-old son. And so to see that experience as a father, you're seeing it through a son's eyes, but as a father, it's the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah.
So being able to experience that is a really, really cool thing. I hope someday I'm able to do that with my son as well.
It's
Mike,
special.
Appreciate the time as always, man. People can check out everything that you have to offer for the big game over at Macadoodles. Definitely check them out over in Darden Prairie. If you're not familiar with their work, you can Google them and find out their location, all of that up on the Google machine. Appreciate Mike joining us as he does each and every Friday here on BK and Ferrario. Coming up in about 10 minutes, we'll dive into the junk drawer, but next, we have not talked about the big game just yet. The NFC has basically been dominated by 3 teams over the past 8 years or so. Do the Seahawks or Patriots have the potential to be that over the next 8 years? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN is powered by Kaufman Townsley, St. Louis's injury lawyers. Call 314-777-7777.
That's 314-777-7777.
101 ESPN's Blues Fan of the Week.
Congratulations to Christopher McGinnis from Millstadt, Illinois. He's our newest 101 ESPN Blues Fan of the Week.
Submit your pick now at 101ESPN.com to be the next Fan of the Week and take home a pair of tickets to an upcoming Blues game.
Our Blues Fan of the Week is presented by CarStar, your auto body repair experts. Locally owned with nationwide warranty. See us at carstar.com.
Louis Blues hockey can be heard exclusively on 101 ESPN. Get the info you need before and after every Blues game with a First Community pre- and post-game show. First Community Credit Union.
Take your best shot with First Community and presented by Scott Lee Heating Company and Urban Chestnut Brewing Company.
101 ESPN Sports Center.
Pats Seahawks clean up ahead of big game. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night in San Francisco, honors reigned supreme as New England's Mike Vrabel was named NFL Coach of the Year. His QB barely missed out on winning MVP. Matthew Stafford edged Drake May by just one first-place vote. The Patriots signal caller seizes that Levi's Stadium stage Sunday, Super Bowl 60, kicking off at 5:30 p.m. 101 ESPN style. Tomorrow afternoon, college hoops action heating up. Number 19 SLU hosting LaSalle while Missouri visits sub-500 South Carolina. Later, Illinois tackles 10th-ranked Michigan State. This Sports Center update has been powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmers Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. The Super Bowl is just a couple of days away, and the buzz for this game just isn't quite the same as it has been in recent seasons. There's legitimate reason for that. You know, it's not the Patriots with Tom Brady. It's not the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. I asked my wife yesterday, how many players could you name in this year's Super Bowl? And I think she's representative of like the super casual football fan, the fan that tunes in occasionally to the Sunday night game and maybe they watch with friends at a party or whatever, but they're not like locked in and playing fantasy football or any of these things, or like listening to our show, for example, right? And she said, I think I can name two. She said, I've got Drake May and Sam Darnold or Darnold. I forget what his last name is, but that one. That's the other one. So she could basically just name the two quarterbacks in this game. And I think that's representative of where a lot of people are heading into this year's Super Bowl. But that doesn't mean that these teams are bad. It doesn't mean that they can't continue to have some success. Drake May's awesome. And Mike Vrabel's an outstanding football coach. This is probably the worst roster that they'll have around Drake May. Now, the schedule will also get tougher in future seasons, so that's something to take into consideration. And maybe they don't have the same record moving forward, but the roster you would think would improve from here. The Seattle Seahawks, I have no idea if they'll be able to replicate this in future seasons, but Mike McDonald appears to be maybe the best defensive coach in the NFL right now. And they've got some really good talent on that side of the ball that's on rookie-level contracts. So maybe they will be. When I was looking into this before the show today, T-Bone, it brought up this question to me, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. There have basically been three teams in the NFC that have dominated over the last 8 years. It's the Rams who went to multiple Super Bowls, the Eagles who went to multiple Super Bowls, and the 49ers who went to multiple Super Bowls. Those teams didn't get there and then dominate once they got there, but they were able to reach the Super Bowl multiple times over. Do you view either the Seahawks or the Patriots as a team capable of becoming the next Eagles, the next 49ers, the next Rams team that is able to not only get there this season, but this becomes a launching pad for them in future years?
Yeah, I don't. And I'll start with the Seahawks. I don't see it, especially for the Seahawks. They're the one I feel most confident in saying this because, one, though Darnold got them here, I don't expect that Darnold's a guy that will constantly be able to get a team to a Super Bowl. And I think he's the kind of guy that I've brought this up multiple times, is the team has to lift up Sam Darnold, not Sam Darnold lifts up the team. And you've brought this up before. Defenses, you can have a great defense one year. Odds are you're not going to be the best defense in the league like the Seahawks were this year. Odds are they're not going to repeat that. Now, they may not fall off a cliff, but if this was the 10th best defense in the NFL, we're probably not even talking about them potentially as being favorites in this game against the New England Patriots. That's how important the defense is to their success. So I don't see them doing it. I don't know if there's a team in the NFC that I see doing it. I think we're about to be going through a rotating door in the NFC. for the next couple of years, especially because some teams like the Rams, their window is down to like 2 years while Stafford is still there. Meanwhile, for the Patriots, I don't see it, and it's twofold for me. One, I still expect that we're going to see Mahomes, Lamar, and Josh Allen still reign tall in this conference. They've got to figure out their rosters, but they have more room to make mistakes or not even like get an A+ on their drafting or free agent signings because they have elite quarterbacks to the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens. And the second reason that I would say this too, I think what you brought up with the schedule with the New England Patriots is very key here for why I'm not sure if Drake May is going to repeat what he has done. I like Drake May. I think he is a franchise quarterback. I don't know if he's going to repeat being an MVP candidate, and it's because you're going to see the improvement of rosters around Mahomes, Lamar, and Josh. But it is also, once the schedule gets tougher, look at what he's done in the playoffs. He's not been very good against these playoff teams. He's done it with his legs. He's done just enough, and he deserves credit for getting them here to this point to the Super Bowl. But as the schedule starts to get tougher, I think his numbers come down, and with his numbers coming down, so will the success of the Patriots a little bit, to where I don't think they're going to be a team that's going to be able to repeat this as well.
I definitely agree with you on the Patriots. I think they were a creation of their schedule. They earned it. They got here. They deserved it. But they were also, in my opinion, a creation of their schedule. We'll see if they're able to repeat this next year. I would bet against it. On the NFC side of things, the Seahawks I find to be pretty fascinating because I don't think they're a dominant team, but I think they could be the next, 49ers, but with defense instead of offense. The 49ers are basically like, you look at them every year and you're like, Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, really? That's not your traditional way of getting to the Super Bowl. But they found a way to make it work, and that was in part because Kyle Shanahan is just one of the best coaches in the NFL. And as an offensive mind, he's up there with Sean McVay as probably the two guys that I would most want to build around. Maybe you could throw Ben Johnson into that category now as well. So every year, he gives you a chance. Mike McDonald might be that, but on the defensive side of the ball. And I think we've seen a swing in the NFL recently where it is becoming more about defense than it has been in a really long time. If you're able to prevent those explosive plays on offense, man, that is your meal ticket. That is your way to not only be a good regular season team, but also to have success once you get into the postseason. So maybe he can just be that team. That being said, it doesn't happen every year. You are more likely to have off years if you are built on defense than if you're built on offense. Look at the Eagles. The Eagles last year were the best defense in the NFL according to points per game allowed. And it allowed them to have these weird games where their offense just wouldn't look right, but their defense made up for it. And they were able to win enough to get to the playoffs, and then boom, everything clicked for a 3 or 4 game stretch once they got there. Then this year, defense comes back to the pack a little bit. It wasn't bad, but a little bit from where it was last year, where they're not otherworldly great. And now suddenly, instead of being the best defense in the NFL, they're 6th in points per game allowed this season. And then you have an offense that takes a slight step back as well, and now you miss the playoffs entirely. The same thing was true for a team like Minnesota, who last year had an awesome defense. This year you have a pretty good defense, kind of similar to Philly, honestly. Offense takes a slight step back, though. Are they going to be able to be as efficient next year with JS and as Sam Darnold as they were this year? I would probably bet against it. But I think of these two teams, the team that is more likely to have an Eagles, 49ers, or Rams type of run where they could get to multiple Super Bowls in the next 7-8 years, I strangely think it's actually the Seahawks, even though I don't think their quarterback is as good, because I trust in their defensive plan, and I do think that's able to get you over the top. And they have the easier conference.
I was just about to say, to add to it, I mean, you look at the conference, it's why I still feel like there might be a rotating door that comes out of this, because I think next year you're going to see the Rams go all in. They've got another year or two with Stafford. I don't know what to make of the 49ers because they're getting old. They're getting old quickly, especially on the offensive side of the ball with George Kittle. You're not probably going to get that out of McCaffrey. You've got the Eagles, which I don't know what they are. I would say the team that's most likely to do what we're talking about, they're not even in the Super Bowl, would be the Bears in that conference. The way that they're building around Caleb Williams with another offensive-minded head coach and Ben Johnson, I just don't trust the build of the defense, of trust that's going to be our calling card. And, like, I was trying to think in my head, like, okay, who has done this over a consistent period of time? You could argue Belichick did it with New England. There, to me, would be the one-off. They also had Tom Brady, to where if you put Darnold on that team, I don't think we're talking about Bill Belichick with 7 rings. He may have gotten a couple, but I don't think he's getting 7. And then I would go to the Chiefs. He wasn't the head coach, but Spags did a great job. The last 2 Super Bowl runs for them was not on what Mahomes and the offense was doing. It was what the defense was doing. But again, if I put Darnold on that team, I don't know that the Chiefs win those Super Bowls. I don't think they go back-to-back. And that would be my call. That's why I said Darnold is the guy that gets lifted up by the team around him. Sure. And there's just less wiggle room for mistakes when you have the Mahomes, the Allens, the Staffords. If you kind of screw up a little bit where maybe the defense doesn't end up being as good as you expected, or like the Bills, for example, you can look at them this year. Dude, they nearly got to the AFC Championship game all because of their quarterback.
Okay, last thing that I wanted to get to here, and we'll talk a little bit more about the matchup itself coming up in the 1 o'clock hour for this year's Super Bowl. I mentioned my wife knows literally 2 players from this game. She by name. When you look at previous Super Bowls that had maybe a team that wasn't as star-driven, you look to the New York Giants when they got there with Eli and the guys, basically. Their defensive line kind of became a name recognition unit because of what they were able to do against Tom Brady. You look back to the Seahawks Super Bowl against the Broncos, where their defense really showed out, and then Malcolm Smith ended up winning the Super Bowl MVP that year. Or the Broncos against the Panthers, where Von Miller had already been a great player. And for any football fan, you knew who Von Miller was. He transcended almost the NFL based upon his performance and his MVP game against the Carolina Panthers. Who do you think is the most likely player in this game for somebody that goes into it only knowing 2 players? They know Drake May, they know Sam Darnold. Who do you think is the most likely player to up their cachet based upon their performance?
For me, it would be Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, you look at some of the games that he's had. Like, look at the NFC Championship game. 10 receptions for 153 yards and a touchdown. He probably wins Super Bowl MVP with those type of numbers. And I think he's capable of doing that against the New England Patriots. He's the guy that I would circle as he is probably the one. If it's not going to be a quarterback that wins MVP and is able to do this, that gets their name out there, I think it's him because he gets kind of slept on because he's out in Seattle with Sam Darnold. I think he's the one that has that potential.
I would look to Jackson Smith and Jigba as the most likely candidate here. If I was to look at something different, though, I would go to the defensive side of the ball because that's where I think this game's going to be won. And I would say, like, for Seattle, we've mentioned his name a number of times this week. Nick Emanwari, a safety/nickel cornerback for them, a second-round pick from a year ago. He's just a stud. He does everything. He's a nightmare to deal with in the slot. He is somebody like Cooper DeJean last year just wrecked the Chiefs' game plan. They had no answers for them. The same thing could be true for a guy like Nick Emanwari in this game. If the Patriots ultimately win it, though, I think you could hear a ton during this game about Milton Williams, defensive tackle that they signed from Philadelphia, and he's been a game wrecker so far in the postseason for the Patriots. Interior pressure is a nightmare for quarterbacks to deal with. You know who really doesn't like getting pressure up the middle? Sam Darnold.
Yep.
He freaks out, throws the ball away, and it ends up getting intercepted. If a couple of those plays happen with Milton Williams as the guy that's creating that pressure, I think you could leave this game saying, oh my God, he had the kind of impact on this game. He's not the same player as the guy that I'm about to mention, but he had the same kind of impact on this game as when Aaron Donald probably should have won the MVP in the Rams Super Bowl a couple of years ago. So that would be another name that I would mention in this category as well. Coming up in about 15 minutes, what does this season represent for Matthew Liberatore, the seemingly forgotten man in the Cardinals rotation? But next, the Junk Drawer here on 101 ESPN.
101 ESPN has your shot to score a 4-pack of passes to the St. Louis Boat and Fishing Show, taking place Friday, February 20th through Sunday, February 22nd at the Americas Center. It's a great time for the whole family, including the Bobbers in a Boat giveaway, where you can guess the number of bobbers for your chance to win a huge prize. Find all the info and your chance to win free passes for the St. Louis Boat and Fishing Show, February 20th through the 22nd, right now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 app.
Hey, football fans, picture this. You bet on your favorite player in the big game to score the first touchdown, but his teammate scores instead. With BetMGM's second chance promotion, you'll get your stake back if your first touchdown scorer scores second instead. That's right. Bet on any pro football player to score the first touchdown of the big game. If you're right, you win. If your player scores second, you get your stake back in cash. Keep the fun going after the first player crosses the goal line with BetMGM's second chance. Try a first touchdown scorer wager with confidence today. BetMGM. Make it legendary. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. Missouri only. New and existing customer offer. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards paid back in unrestricted withdrawable funds. Please gamble responsibly.
WXOS HD1 East St. Louis. 101 ESPN is driven by Auto Centers Nissan, home of the lifetime warranty and 30-day return. Live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the E&B Granite Studios, you're tuned into BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN. Let's open it up. The Junk Drawer with BK and Ferrario.
Relatively quick jump drawer today. T-Bone, the Olympics, the opening ceremonies are tonight. There's a story that has been released about some of the individuals involved, and it's not a particularly great look for them. Now, some of the male ski jumpers are alleged to be using penis injections in an effort to boost their athletic performance. Now, you may be wondering, how could that possibly be related to their ability to go on these long jumps as a skier?
Well, because I thought that.
Sure. So I did some digging into this, T-Bone. And
what a weird search history if anybody looks at it on your computer.
The explanation on why they are using these injections, if indeed it is true, these are just allegations right now by a German newspaper, is that apparently when you use these injections into your penis as a skier, you do so right before you are measured for your suit. And when they measure you for your suit, they do measure your genitals, and I this is all real, I promise you. And they tried that basically determines how big your suit is. And the bigger your suit, the more surface area your suit has, the more when you're in the air, it will keep you gliding. And they want to be in the air for longer. That helps them as they're going over these long jumps. So they are being alleged to do this to gain like an extra, I think it's like 5 millimeters. I mean, for us, it would seem like nothing, basically. But for them,
it's the fight between gold and not being on the podium.
Exactly. Think about how much sometimes these Olympic Games can come down to just the smallest possible data point. And that appears to be the case here. So, yeah. Big story, a bombshell report. The Winter Olympics are hit right now by a penis injection allegation heading into tonight's opening ceremonies.
It wouldn't be the Olympics without two things, BK. One, the worry, the month leading up to, are they going to get everything done? Are the NHL arenas going to be, or their hockey arenas going to be good to go for the hockey tournament? Which always is a worry, and then everything ends up being fine at the Olympics. And two, if there's not a major scandal that goes on. Now, in the summer, it's typically track and field, with those guys doping or those ladies doping. Here, it's a different one that I wasn't expecting, but there's always one at the Olympics.
Yeah, we now can begin the Olympics. It's just like Super Bowl week. Every Super Bowl week, there's got to be some kind of a story involving an off-field allegation for Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback, his father. And this week, we got one. There was one that existed with him, so it's officially Super Bowl week. And for the Olympics, we can now begin the opening ceremonies because there is an allegation.
I could do without these benchmarkers that we always have for all these events. I could do without them, but you know what? Let the games begin.
A little bit of news from news up in Pennsylvania. Prosecutors say they will be withdrawing the felony aggravated against Gavin McKenna charge against is expected to be upon further review evidence. Prosecutors believe that McKenna did not act with intent to cause serious bodily harm, nor did he recklessly act with extreme indifference to the value of human life. Thus, officials will be withdrawing the aggravated assault charge against us. So that's big news for one of the top prospects in the upcoming NA draft. Alongside and Ferrario, ESPN coming up next. What does this season rep for Matthew Liberatore? We'll talk about it here on BK and Ferrario.
Oh, behave. Yeah.
101 ESPN has your shot to score a pair of passes to the 2026 State Farm Missouri Valley Conference Men's Basketball Tournament, hitting the court at Enterprise Center March 5th through the 8th. March begins here with the Arch Madness of the annual MVC Tournament, featuring an 11-team field. All session and single session tickets are on sale now.
Get all the details and enter to win free tickets for Arch Madness now at 101ESPN.com or on your 101 app.
the Blues game? Want to hear the highlights? Need player reaction? Want more analysis and opinion? It's all here on Curbside, your next day postgame podcast with a voice of the St. Louis Blues, Chris Kerber. Catch new episodes of Curbside every morning after every Blues game on 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app.
Curbside is presented by Blue Note Roofing. Roofing, siding, and gutters. Your St. Louis roofing experts. Visit BlueNoteRoofingSTL.com for a free inspection. And by Bellman Automotive for the best price on a new Buick, GMC, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, or a used vehicle. Shop Bellman and Troy online and at Bellman.com. You can't do better than Bellman.
BK and Ferrario are broadcasting live from the E&B Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN.
Hey, with Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. It feels like the forgotten man on the Cardinals for 2026 is Matthew Liberatore. I don't know that we've had a single conversation about him this offseason, Tebow.
Good for Libby, then.
He's expected to be in the rotation on opening day. There's a real chance he is the starter on opening day for this team. I don't know which direction they'll ultimately go, but there's at least a chance he's the guy when they take the field on opening day. And I have no idea what to expect from him. He's 26 years old. He was really good in the first half last year and really not very good in the second half last year. It's the same issue that we've been talking about for years with him. As the game progresses, as the season progresses, his velocity goes down, the command goes away, his effectiveness drops, and ultimately you have to decide, is he a reliever or a starter? If he can get that figured out and he's more the pitcher that he was in the first half than the second half, you've got a starter that could be a mid-rotation starter for you long term. If he's not, he's more similar to what he was in the second half, or if those issues just don't go away, you probably have a long-term reliever at the major league level. I do think, and I saw a piece earlier today from MLB.com, is 2026 a make or break season for these four Cardinals? And they brought up Newt, they brought up Walker, Gorman. We've talked about them a million different times. The answer is yes. I think the answer is also yes on Libby as a starter. I also think the answer might be yes for Libby as a Cardinal, because if he's not a starter long term, I don't think he fits here. I don't think you bring back Matthew Liberatore at the salary he's likely to command as a middle inning reliever when they're probably not expecting to be a true contender in 2027 either. So you probably trade him after this season. So this is a huge year for Matthew Liberatore, not as a major league player, but as a Cardinal.
Yeah, I agree on the first one. I agree that this is the final hope for him as a starter, because if he's going to have issues with maintaining velocity by the time he gets to like the third inning in his starts, and he can't get right-handers out too, that's the other big problem, then you can't have that guy as a starter, because at a bare minimum, you got to be a 5-and-dive guy. And he wasn't even that in the home stretch of last season. So I agree on that. I don't know if I would go as far as saying his future as a Cardinal, because I still think he could still become a very good left-handed reliever for St. Louis. Because you look at his numbers, last year his numbers really dipped against lefties. I wonder if part of that was because, once again, his velo dropped. But in his career, he's done a very good job against left-handed hitters, holding them to a 641 OPS, and they are 30% below league average against him. That's a guy that could become a weapon out of a bullpen, and not just a middle relief arm. He could become a true left-handed specialist that takes JoJo's role when JoJo gets traded at the trade deadline.
How much value does that have for a team that's expecting to win 80 games, though?
Maybe not for, like, this year, but that's a guy that could be coveted at the next trade deadline. If he is a guy that becomes very good for you, that would have another, 2 years of control, I think.
Yeah, he's got 3 years after this season of control remaining. However, he's $2.5 million right now. If he has even a decent season as a starter, I mean, we saw what just happened with Andre Palante, who's making $4 million in arbitration, and he was terrible last year. If you have a decent season this year from Libby, he probably gets up to $5 million next year, which puts him on track for 7 or 8 in 2028, and then like $10 to $15 million in 2029.
Yeah, I still think you can play, because if you'll become a very good high-leverage reliever, you can still be worth a pretty penny. Now, maybe not to that extent through the ARB system, but my hope, if you were to play this route of keeping him and going into the bullpen with him, would be he becomes a setup / ninth inning guy, depending on matchups, very good against lefties, has elite stuff because it's going to play up when he goes to the bullpen, and then you could hopefully cash in on him as an asset and trade him at the trade deadline. It's why I wouldn't just say this is his make or break year as a Cardinal, because I think you can still try and make it work for another season in the bullpen with him.
But in that scenario, you're planning to trade him.
Yeah,
whether it's in the offseason or the following year, he would not be expected to be a long-term Cardinal. So to me, either way, it's a make or break year for him to be a long-term Cardinal. Maybe I'll frame it a little bit differently. Instead of saying like he's gone, he's done, he's no longer a Cardinal. Like the idea of him being a long-term Cardinal comes down to whether or not he can truly become a starter for you. Because if you're going to pay him $5 million next year, you need to do so as a starter. He needs to be somebody that you can count upon as a starting pitcher in the rotation, along with Liam Doyle, hopefully, some of these other like Jurangelo Sainja. And then you look at all the other guys that are currently in your system, whether it's Quinn Matthews or Michael McGreevy, who's already here, Richard Fitz. I mean, think about the number of pitchers that they currently have that are, this next wave of big league starter. And he's got to be pretty damn good to be a part of that. Otherwise, he's going to get passed up by guys that are younger and cheaper and potentially better than him. So I think it's a huge year for Matthew Liberatore and what his long-term future will be here in St. Louis. We haven't talked a ton about him, but that will change once we get to opening day. He'll be one of the guys that's most under their microscope because very few other pitchers I feel that about that are in the opening day rotation for you this year. A lot of them are just like, whatever. Palante, I don't know what your future holds, and it's not really that big of a deal either way. McGreevy, there's no real pressure. He's going to be cheap and cost-controlled and young, and he'll be a back-end starter for you. Great. That's kind of it. Liberatore's the one guy that there is urgency to find out exactly what he can be for you. In 15 minutes, we'll get into one's got to go. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's got to go. Next, our NFL weekend look ahead. We have one game to preview. We'll tell you some of the top matchups, and I feel like everybody right now is saying this is going to be an absolute blowout in favor of Seattle. What's the case for New England? How do they win this game? We'll talk about that next year on 101 ESPN.
Love TMA? Then nominate yourself to be the Morning After Listener of the Month, and you could be selected and score a Form Energy prize pack. Sign up now at 101ESPN.com or TMASTL.com. The TMA Listener of the Month Club is presented by Form Energy. We do the work.
The big game is just days away, and the Underdog app is ready to go for you. Get your action in right now. There's no better place to do so than over on the Underdog app. Maybe you want to have, you think there's going to be a big game from Drake May or Sam Darnold. Maybe you like Kenneth Walker to go higher on his rushing yards at 74.5. Maybe you believe, hey, this is Jackson Smith and Jigba's coming out party once you get to the big game, and he's going to have a receiving touchdown. He's going to go higher on his receiving yardage in this game. You can get in on all of the action right now over on the Underdog app. What are you waiting for? Download that app today. Use our promo code BKO. You'll score $75 in fantasy bonus entries when you play your first $5 on fantasy. It's using the promo code BKO. It's incredibly easy. Open up the app today, download it, and then get all of your picks in for the big game. Underdog, make plays, win money. Must be 18 or older, present in Missouri. Terms to apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms. _DFS_.html for details. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
broadcasting live from the Centene Community Ice Center inside the ENB Granite Studios. This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN, presented by Bud Light and Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Bradford Bruns back in the studio for us today. It's 1:28. Your time check brought to you by Clarkson Jeweler, an officially licensed Rolex jeweler. I feel like everybody has coalesced on how they're feeling going into the weekend's game. And I'm a little surprised by it, I guess. It seems as though everybody has decided the Seahawks are not only winning this thing, but they're dominating. That was Alex's opinion yesterday, and I think it's the predominant opinion that I've seen out there. And yet the line has not moved. It was Seattle minus 4.5 when it opened, and it remains Seattle minus 4.5 today. So there's clearly money coming in on the Patriots. Otherwise, that wouldn't stay where it's at right now. So there's a case to be made for New England in this game. There are just very few that are actually making it. And so let's start out with this, T-Bone. This is our final time to really give our thoughts on this game leading into the weekend. You were on the Seahawks coming into the week. Are you still there today after doing any of your prep work going into the weekend's game?
I am. I still think the Seahawks are the team to beat in the Super Bowl. I don't know that they blow this game out because I just don't know that they're capable of doing that. I do think they cover the spread, though, of 4.5. Watching Drake May, he hasn't been good in the playoffs. And this is one of the toughest matchups he's going up against. He didn't look good against the Texans, who had a great defense. Didn't look good against the Broncos, had a great defense. So I expect he's not going to be good. And I think he has to be great for them to take down the Seattle Seahawks against this defense. Because even with all the things I have against Sam Darnold, Seattle's going to put up some points in this game, I believe. So I just don't see that Drake May is going to come and be able to make enough plays. That's why I like Seattle in this one. I think they win by a touchdown.
That's kind of where I see it. I also view it as just a really low-scoring game.
I do too.
I think this has the feel of a 20-13 kind of a game. I saw somebody on the YouTube chat, Gator, said Stalter has a great pick for the Super Bowl. He calls it a lock. First half under 23.5 total points. I'm good with that. I like just the under in general, especially the first quarter. I like some of the first quarter plays, under on some of the yardage totals for individual players, under on the points in general. I think this is going to be a game where they're very much feeling each other out early on. And I think it kind of continues that way. I don't know where these offenses have a significant advantage over the opponent. I feel that way about the Seahawks. They are built on run first, play action over the top. Well, if you really only have one guy that can beat me over the top, and it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, as a defensive coordinator for the Patriots, I can game plan for that going into this one. And they have a superstar corner in Christian Gonzalez who, when JSN is lined up outside, which doesn't happen a ton, but it happens a decent amount, he's probably going to be lined up one-on-one against Christian Gonzalez, and they'll have some safety help over the top as well. And then you've got interior pressure that can potentially affect what Sam Darnold is as a quarterback. He does not like seeing that. So I just think both offenses are going to have a really hard time moving the ball. These run defenses are outstanding, and both offenses have relied a lot on what they've done in the running game. We're both on the same page, though. We see the Seahawks winning this one by about a touchdown. Can you make a case for New England? Or are you just somebody that views it as you're like, there's no way that New England wins this game? It's Seahawks. No chance New England has a path here.
Now, I can make a case for them. Now, how confident do I feel in this case? I don't know. Clearly not enough to take the Patriots. But I think because it's Sam Darnold on the other side, I still don't trust him enough to where I can make the case for the Patriots. I mean, you mentioned that internal pressure. If they can go inside and get to him, the Patriots' pass rush has been pretty good in this postseason. And if they are going to be able to get to Sam Darnold, then we're not going to see a lot of offense from the Seahawks. And if this is going to be a low-scoring game, I like the under. But that means it does play into the favor of the New England Patriots, in my opinion, because I don't know that they're going to do much offensively. But if your defense gives you a fighting chance to where really all it takes is maybe one play that breaks down defensively for the Seahawks and it leads to a Patriots score or a drive that leads to them scoring, then that's kind of their formula. You've got to get internal pressure on Sam Darnold. You've got to get in his face because that's when he feels the most uncomfortable. And then just for their offense, Drake May has to play sound football, right? I said this earlier. This is why I said I wouldn't take a receiver from the Patriots to win Super Bowl MVP. I don't think they're going to have big plays because The Seahawks don't give that up. But what I could see is Drake May just plays the smart, right? He plays the flawless football game of, okay, I'm not going to take the 5-yard sack. That really sets off a drive. I'm going to dink and dump it to a wide receiver that's cutting across the middle, or I'm going to just hit my check down with my running back in Stevenson, which he's gone to a lot in this postseason. If he's willing to be patient and take what is given to him from the Seahawks, he can probably dink and dunk the Patriots down the field to score just enough points in a game where their defense is able to get in the face of Sam Darnold.
Yeah, to me, it's all about that pass rush. It's about whether or not the Patriots are able to get a sustained pass rush on Sam Darnold. If they can, and they make him feel it, and you get back to the Sam Darnold of I'm seeing ghosts in the pocket, that's where things can go awry for them. It really does come down to me for, hey, can your quarterback continue to play the way that he has for most of the season? We've seen a couple of times where Darnold has not been that same guy. Against the Rams, he was mostly really good. That was not always the case, though, down the stretch of the season. Think back to that San Francisco game, for example. It didn't always look pretty in that final game of the regular season. So that would be my case against the Seahawks. Somebody on the text line from Little Jackie's Rolling Paper said, guys, everybody has been saying the same thing all year, and they've been game planning against JSN, yet no one has been able to stop him. What makes you think this week is going to be different? A, they have an all-pro level cornerback. That's part of it, is the Patriots have the kind of corner that can stop anybody from beating them. B, the Seahawks just haven't played against many great defenses this season. Mm-hmm. And the Patriots, at least in the postseason, have been that. They have been a truly great defense. Here are the defenses that the Seahawks have played basically since week 8, so the second half of their season. Washington, Arizona, the Rams 3 different times, Tennessee, Atlanta, Indianapolis, Carolina, San Francisco twice. All of those defenses are below average.
The best one on there might have been like Atlanta.
Yeah. The one good defense that they faced, like truly good, was Minnesota. In that game, JSN had 2 receptions for 23 yards. So that's how. You look at this and you say this is a different caliber of defense than they've faced really since October. They also did play earlier in the season against the Houston Texans, and he had 8 receptions for 125 yards and a touchdown in that game. So I'm not telling you they will shut him down. He's gone up against a very good defense, and he had success. JSN's awesome. There's a reason why he was, up there with Offensive Player of the Year conversations. I just think the Patriots defense has a chance to slow him down, even if they don't shut him down. And maybe every bit as important, who else scares you on this Seahawks offense? The answer is nobody.
No. I guess Shaheed, if he's going over the top.
Absolutely.
Like that could maybe be the argument is if the safeties are going to help over the top and their focus is JSN, maybe you beat them deep on that play. But even then, I don't know that he necessarily scares me.
And the old Belichick plan in these kinds of games would have been, hey, we're putting Christian Gonzalez actually on Shaheed. He's going to shut him down. You will not beat us with Rashid Shaheed. He's not going to get anything over the top. We're going one-on-one all day long. He's going to shadow him. And then because we've been able to shut him down, we will have an extra man giving attention all day long to Jackson Smith and Jigba. He will not see a single play without bracket coverage. So you will always have a safety and a corner on him, and we're going to make his life a living nightmare. So that's the other way that they can make this one difficult on the Seahawks offense. You add in that interior pressure. That's the case for New England, in my opinion. I did not say much about their offense because I think they're going to have a hard time scoring. But if the Patriots are going to win this one, I think they've got to keep the Seahawks to under 20 points. It's got to be like 20-17, 20-16. That's the path for them. I think it's there. It's just very narrow. I think there are more paths to Seattle winning this game than New England. I'm not as confident, though, in Seattle winning this game as I think a lot of other people are. I think it will be close. I think it will be ugly. I think it will be very low scoring. Ultimately, I'll take Seattle as the winner because I don't have a ton of faith in New England's offense to be able to score against them. But there's a real path here for the Patriots to come out on top.
Boy, no wonder why the Super Bowl's got no hype. There's no sexy Mahomes could go for 300.
Nope.
It's a dog fight. That's what it is. It's the dog fight that you watch and you go, was that really good football? Maybe if you don't know the game, right, as well. Like if you're not the diehard football fan, the diehards are going to be BK is going to be drooling about the bracket coverage on JSN. He's like, they went one-on-one with Shaheed and shut him down, and that's why the Patriots are in this thing.
Exactly. I think this is all about defense. Whichever defense is able to make this thing uglier, that's the team that will ultimately come out victorious. Coming up in about 15 minutes, we'll hit the rewind, but next, 314-399-9646. That is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's got to go here on BK and Ferrario.
On this season of Stupiracy, the podcast where stupidity and conspiracy collide, Riz and I take on a theory so ridiculous, you'll swear the internet has finally lost it. The claim? Helen Keller was a fraud. 14 books, 12 U.S. presidents, a global icon, and TikTok says it was all fake. So is this what happens when people get their history lessons from social media? Or is there something they don't want you to see? Stupiracy Season 2 is out now, starting with the Helen Keller conspiracy. Listen wherever you get your podcast or watch on YouTube.
Stupiracy, presented by CarStar, your auto body repair experts. Locally owned with a nationwide guarantee. Visit carstar.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here, and Super Bowl 60 is this Sunday, and DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 60. The DraftKings Sportsbook has all kinds of things for you for Super Bowl 60. You can build together parlays. I think they're the best spot to go to player props. Like one of my favorite player props is JSN for 100-plus receiving yards. Also love Drake May under on his passing yard total. And get this, DraftKings has your back throughout the playoffs, and they're doing it again here during the Super Bowl. They've got your back with early exit protection. If the player in your eligible NFL prop bet goes down in the first half at any point, you still get paid out in cash immediately once your bet settles. No bonus bets, no waiting. So download that DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code TANNER, that's code TANNER, to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus. Physically present in Missouri. Eligibility and restrictions apply. Bet must win to receive bonus bets which expire in 7 days. Minimum odds required. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Limited time offer.
The Redbird Report. Your front row seat to all things Cardinals. From the dugout to the diamond, BK and T-Bone go deep with the latest news, notes, and analysis. Watch the Redbird Report on YouTube or listen online at 101ESPN.com. 101 ESPN Sports Center.
SLU's winning streak hits 16 games. Good afternoon. I'm Bradford Bruns. Your Sports Center update is powered by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Billikens are 22-1 after storming back from down 13 to beat Davidson on Tuesday. Tomorrow, slumping LaSalle invades Midtown. Tip-off unfolding at 2 o'clock. Several hours later, fifth-ranked Illinois will visit number 10, Michigan State. Roughly 51 hours from now, Super Bowl 60 pits Seattle against New England in Santa Clara. NFL MVP runner-up Drake May pilots that Patriots offense. Seahawks rookie DB Nick Emenwari, meanwhile, expects no restrictions despite his low ankle sprain. This Sports Center update was presented by Saliga Heating and Cooling, a Daikin heating and air conditioning dealer.
This is BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Broadcasting live from the ENB Granite Studios at the Centene Community Ice Center. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmers Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN. This is BK and Ferrario. Time now for One's Gotta Go. We offer up the talking points, and you get to pick which one's gotta go on 101 ESPN.
Count that big pen.
All right, it's time for One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 options. We'll tell you which one's gotta go. We're broadcasting live at the E&B Granite Studios out of the Centene Community Ice Center. From the 636, One's Gotta Go Regional Favorites Edition. KC Barbecue, St. Louis Pizza, Philly Cheesesteak, or a Chicago Hot Dog. T-Bone, which one's gotta go?
Oh, well, the Chicago hot dog's got to stay. I like St. Louis style pizza. I'm not getting rid of barbecue either. I think it's the Philly cheesesteak. I've never had it. I want to try it, but that one to me's got to go.
This one's pretty simple to me. St. Louis style pizza has got to go.
And you're wearing a St. Louis shirt. Just take it off. It's
I truly love this city. I think it's a fantastic city, and there are so many excellent food options here. The pizza is just not for me. From the 618, one's got to go cold symptom edition. A sore throat, a cough, sneezing, or runny nose. Which one's got to go? The runny nose, sneeze, cough, or sore throat. Sore throat's got to go for me. It's the worst.
Especially in our industry, it's the worst when you're talking for 3 hours. And then they're like yesterday for me, it was doing the show for 3 hours. Then we go and record the Redbird Report. And then I go and do play-by-play. Mm-hmm. Oh, you have a sore throat. There is no worse feeling in the world.
Yeah, that one's brutal. So that one's got to go for me. One's got to go Winter Olympics edition. T-Bone loves all of these. Luge, skeleton, 2-man bobsled, or 4-man bobsled.
Oh, boy. I will get rid of... I'll get rid of the 4-man bobsled. I mean, you can get rid of all 4 of these, in my opinion, but I have no interest in watching 4 guys run and then jump into this little car. And then I don't even... if I understood it more, maybe I would appreciate it more. I don't really know what they're doing when they're in there because there's no steering wheel. They just kind of like lean a little bit and the car goes. So I get rid of the 4-man bobsled.
4-man for me as well. But I'm more than happy to watch each and every one of these. One's got to go Ways to Watch Sports Edition. Going in person, phone, TV, or tablet. I'd go phone.
I'd say
small
phone
screen.
As well. Yeah. When I watch sports, I want it to be on like 55 plus inches. That way you can really see everything.
314-399-9646 is the air covered service text line. One's got to go least likely for an anytime touchdown on Sunday. AJ Barner, Mac Hollins, Jake Bobo, or Pop Douglas. AJ Barner, Mac Hollins, Jake Bobo, or Pop Douglas. I would say if you're saying like, which one of these would I not bet on? I would not bet on Pop Douglas. He would be the one that I think is least likely to score out of those 4.
America's Fools.
The Patriots are Fool's Gold.
the Centene Community Ice Center inside the ENB Granite Studios. You're tuned into BK and Ferrario on 101 ESPN. Presented by Bud Light and Skimmer's Original Vodka Iced Tea on 101 ESPN. Let's run it back with the Daily Rewind on BK and Ferrario. Brought to you by Gloria Lou, your home sold guaranteed realty. Selling your home begins at GloriaHasTheBuyers.com.
If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all sponsored by Schaefer Door Company. The 101 ESPN app is super easy to use. It is free to download, and that is sponsored by Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers. If that's not your jam, you'd prefer to watch us, you can check us out on YouTube each and every day at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. And when you get over there, you can always check out the latest edition of the Last Minute Blues podcast. You can check out yesterday, we recorded a brand new edition of the Redbird Report, talking about the Brendan Donovan deal, where things stand now for the Cardinals in their rebuild. And there are two, not one, but two editions of the Spread Zone this week, heading into this Sunday's Super Bowl matchup for all of the bets that you can make on that game. So if you want any of that, or you just want to check out BK and Ferrario, it's all available for you at youtube.com/101ESPN STL. Blues are off. They are officially in their Olympic break. It's for the best for everybody. I think we could use a little bit of time off from the Blues.
Yeah.
I think the Blues could use a little bit of time off as well. We'll certainly be talking about all of the Blues players that are involved in the Olympics over the coming days and weeks.
I just saw Army did something with TSN talking about Team Canada, and he had a smile on his face.
Yeah.
He went from this situation to go be the GM of arguably one of the best teams in the Olympics. Good for him.
We do, however, have a lot of good college hoops over the weekend. Tomorrow, we will get to see Illinois versus Michigan State. It is tomorrow night, 7 o'clock on Big Fox. They've been getting some huge ratings this year for college basketball. This is the kind of game that could get your squad T-Bone up to the potential 1 seed. How you feeling going into this one? Michigan State has been leaking oil lately.
Yeah, I feel really good about their chances of going on the road and taking down Izzo's squad. It's twofold. One, Illinois is playing their best basketball of the season. Wagler's on fire. Right now, it doesn't feel like they can lose. And you mentioned Michigan State. They just got upset in their last contest. They are leaking oil right now. I think you're going to see Illinois put up some points. I think they're going to win this. I'm surprised Michigan State is favored in this contest.
Michigan State has been excellent defensively. Now, they've got their issues on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively, they're as good as it comes in not only the Big Ten, but really the country this season. So that's one of the big questions going in, is how does Illinois respond to that? They also have the best offense in the country, so I don't have a whole lot of concerns about it. Illinois has played well on the road. They just had a couple of big top 10 wins against Purdue and Nebraska, so I think Illinois ultimately comes out with a win here. I do wonder, because Michigan State has had some controversy surrounding some of their best players as well, including Fears, who had some tripping stuff going on in his last game. I wonder if they respond in a big way in this one. That would be my one concern. On the SLU side of things, they've got a must-win, not because it's a huge game, but because they're playing against LaSalle at home, and LaSalle is not good. That game is tomorrow as well. It will be at 2 o'clock at Chaffetz Arena. I think SLU wipes the floor with them and has no issues whatsoever, and they avoid that bad loss on the resume.
I do too. I think the most dangerous game of this one, their next two, and the previous one, the last four, was that Davidson game, because they were coming off of the big vibes at SLU Arena, and then you go to Davidson, which is not a great environment, and the guys were dealing with the flu bug. Hopefully that's out of their system. You're right. They should take care of business, and I'm expecting them to take care of business.
On the Mizzou side of things, they play against South Carolina on the road tomorrow. It is a noon tip on SEC Network. This is a must-win if you're going to try to get into the NCAA tournament. South Carolina is not good, but these teams are kind of mirror images of one another in a lot of ways. I don't feel good about it. Missouri has not played well on the road. I'll go ahead and pick them, but I don't have any confidence whatsoever. I'm only picking them because I'm a homer. That's it.
I would take Missouri as well. I think they will win this game, but I'm with you. I think this is going to be close. I think it's going to be nerve-wracking for Mizzou fans. I think this is one of those games where, in theory, you should be looking at with about 10 minutes to go in the second half going, all right, I probably don't have to watch the final 10 minutes. I think they're going to make this interesting. They seem to play down to their competition.
All right, T-Bone. Final thoughts. Super Bowl on Sunday. Who wins? Do they cover the spread? Who's your Super Bowl MVP?
So I am going Seahawks cover the spread of 4.5. They win 20-13 is what I think the score is going to be, because I think it is going to be about a touchdown. And I'm going JSN as Super Bowl MVP. I think he's going to have a huge game. I know we talked about like what the plan is, how New England can kind of slow him down. I thought the Rams, who would have had a great game plan for him the third time around, and he went off against them. I don't think you can stop him when he puts his head down and is on a mission. I think he's going to go 10 receptions, 150-plus receiving yards, a touchdown, and that will get him MVP.
I'm going to go with the Seahawks as well. I like them to win by the same score that you do, 20-13. I think this is low scoring. Take the under in this one as well. And I'm going to go Sam Darnold ultimately comes out with the MVP, not because I think he has a huge game, but because when it is like by default, you got to give it to somebody. They typically end up going to the quarterback. If I was to bet on somebody else, you want a long shot bet, go ahead and give me Rashid Shaheed. Just because I think you have multiple outs there. One, a big play in the passing game. Two, they give him some of that gadgety stuff around the line of scrimmage, whether it's a jet sweep or a screen, whatever. He can make a play after he gets the ball in his hands. And three, he's their punt returner. So maybe you see something on special teams in this game as well. So I do like the Seahawks to win. I think it's low scoring. I think they ultimately cover this spread as well. For Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Bradford Bruns did a fantastic job for us today back in the studio. We appreciate you guys tuning in each and every day this week. We'll talk to you on Monday. Enjoy the big game on Sunday. The Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Jamie Rivers here, and it's time for a New Jersey giveaway. We have your shot to score an autographed Blues jersey signed by number 55, Colton Parayko. Enter to win that Colt 55 autographed jersey right now at 101ESPN.com or on the 101 mobile app. Courtesy of St. Luke's, ranked top 2% in the nation for cardiac surgery by health grades. Visit stluke's-st